Important update about YouTube playlists. Hey everyone. We've received many messages asking why our YouTube playlists aren't showing up. Do we create YouTube playlists? Yes, we absolutely do. So why can't you see them? Honestly, we're not sure. We've been in contact with YouTube support for several months now, but we still haven't received a clear answer or solution. After much discussion, our team has decided to take matters into our own hands. We believe the issue might be related to the number of playlists we've created on a single channel, possibly too many. Our solution? We're launching 2 additional YouTube channels, giving us a total of 3. This way, we can organize our audiobooks better and avoid the playlist visibility issue in the future. This change only affects our YouTube audience. If you're a patron supporter, you can still access all our audiobooks by visiting the collection menu on Patreon. Thanks so much for your time and continued support. Happy listening. Is this all you could offer when you brought me exactly where I wanted to be? He declared. Now. You wanted to rob me. Your intentions are clear from a distance. Why shouldn't I end your life right now? Luffy asked, squeezing Tesoro's neck. Tesoro didn't respond. Even the manager and Bakura looked at him from a distance with fear, immobile, unable to move. Well, this is one of my abilities. I can stop time for a short period. It's not the strongest power, but it helps me make moves when I want. Luffy spoke calmly. He could use this ability only for a few seconds. Seeing the time for his ability run out, he simply threw Tesoro to the ground. The man fell, rolling across the gold floor. Suddenly, the whole room returned to normal, with Bakura taking a deep breath while the manager stood frightened, trembling in fear. Tesoro began to get up and said, "What did you do, you damn brat?" he exclaimed, clearly angry. "Well, as you can see, I'm stronger than you," Luffy commented with some mockery. "You'll pay for this. You're not the only one who can paralyze someone," Tesoro shouted and raised his hand toward Luffy. Quickly, he tried to use the gold that his body absorbed, but Luffy took a step forward as if unaffected by anything Tesoro tried. "Unfortunately, your gold doesn't work against me, Tesoro," he said, taking another step. Bakura truly saw what she thought would happen the moment Tesoro tried to fight this guy. "What's going on?" Tesoro was surprised and tried again, but nothing affected this strange man until he tried to see the gold inside him and was shocked not to find any. "No, what did you do?" he screamed, a bit frightened. "Secret," Luffy replied. "He must have bathed in seawater before coming here. He seems to know my weaknesses," Tesoro thought, suspecting Luffy was someone specialized in killing him. "Then take this." Tesoro made the gold from the ceiling descend, quickly starting to cover Luffy completely, interrupting his steps. Luffy looked around, surrounded by gold, while Tesoro watched with some frustration, especially when he saw Luffy begin to smile. "This may stop me. But not for long," he declared, and all the gold began to be absorbed around Luffy as if he were a black hole, and soon, he was left with no gold around him, his system starting to sound an alert. "Gotcha Sazamadi Shida." Luffy landed on the ground while wiping his lips as if he had actually eaten the gold. "I've always wanted to say something like that in an ideal situation," he murmured as he recalled Natsu's epic lines from Fairy Tail. His gaze returned forward. "Thank you, Tesoro, you just gave me hundreds of thousands of Baileys. Please, keep going. Send more." Luffy mocked. Tesoro, a bit frightened, began launching more gold, while Luffy placed his hand on the metal as if it were a black hole, absorbing everything. "Are you going to keep sending it piece by piece, Tesoro? That's no fun," Luffy said with some boredom, thinking about taking everything at once. In the next moment, Tesoro watched as he touched the ground. Luffy placed both hands on the floor, and suddenly all the gold around the space started to be sucked up, revealing the floor below. Everyone took a step back to avoid falling, while Luffy remained in the middle of the void, simply standing on an invisible platform with his evolved moonwalk, calmly looking ahead. Tesoro looked frustrated, angry, yet simultaneously shocked and somewhat afraid. After all, there was someone in this world who could take his gold and make it disappear. "Could it be that my fruit has a weakness to another fruit?" he murmured as he looked at Luffy. Who are you?" he immediately asked. "Well, maybe it's time I introduce myself," Luffy said, seeing that it was time to stop being mysterious. At that moment, someone appeared from the hallway. "Tesoro, listen. Monkey D. Luffy is on this ship. We shouldn't mess with him at all, he's too dangerous, of 4 emperors. We're all going to die," a woman exclaimed, none other than Karina herself. Without noticing the missing floor, she began to fall, screaming in fright, only to be caught by Bakura, who pulled her back. "What's going on?" she asked, looking ahead and seeing a man floating in the middle of the empty space, while Tesoro watched, gritting his teeth. "Too late, he's already here." Baccarat murmured. It was then that Tesoro finally opened his eyes and looked at Luffy. I don't blame them. Luffy commented. After all, people seem dumb enough not to distinguish a person with a hat from someone without one. It's really disappointing. He muttered before responding to Tesoro. As for my introduction, I am Monkey D. Luffy. He said. What? What are you doing here? Tesoro muttered in fear. Isn't it obvious? I came to make you my subordinate. Luffy said. You think that? Tesoro couldn't even finish his sentence before Luffy appeared in front of him and immediately punched him in the face. Well, I figured you wouldn't accept it that easily. So, I'll start with a beating. Luffy said. Immediately, Tesoro flew like a lightning bolt, smashing into the wall, exploding into solid gold and crashing through to the next one. He flew a considerable distance, destroying everything just from the force of Luffy's punch. What? Karina exclaimed, shocked, while Baccarat stood beside her equally stunned, and the manager trembled in fear. Well, as you can see, I'm in the process of turning Tesoro into a member of my fleet, and you all as well. So, don't try anything, or else. Well, I'll have to give you all a beating too. Luffy said as everyone just watched him. He disappeared in the next moment, advancing toward the destroyed wall. Tesoro was getting up at that moment in the middle of a golden casino while the people there ran in fear from the sudden explosion. No. I can't die here. He murmured. But I will never, ever become someone's servant. He exclaimed as his past resurfaced. A flashback of Mary Jo eyes appeared in his mind, when he had become a slave, or when the Tenri Obito had taken the woman he loved away, and he could do nothing. No. I will never bow to anyone again. I'd rather die than become someone's slave. He shouted in fury. Meanwhile, all the gold in that room began to react, as did the entire island. In front of him, a figure emerged from the wall while the golden floor cracked under his feet as he landed there. Tesoro looked at Luffy with such rage that it even surprised him. You bastard! He exclaimed, quickly beginning to hurl gold at Luffy again. The gold surged forward, filled with thin strands advancing in every direction around Luffy as it wrapped around him, attempting to trap him. This won't work. Luffy merely murmured as the golden chain suddenly vanished, being absorbed by his body. Come on, Tesoro. I'll even admit your will to fight, but gold, man? Forget that idea, it's not going to work. Luffy said, hoping for an interesting fight, though he couldn't expect much from the gold user. In the next moment, Luffy saw a golden fist begin to transform into a layer of armament hockey, rushing toward him. Luffy immediately raised his hand to stop the blow but was dragged backward by the force of the attack. He tried to absorb the gold, but this time it didn't work. I see. So things coated with hockey don't work in the system either. Luffy murmured. Luffy then countered the fist with his hockey and charged forward, while more giant fists of gold and hockey came at him. He zigzagged through the air until he reached the man, who was already somewhat injured, landing a kick to his stomach, making him spit saliva as he flew, crashing through more walls until he was expelled from the casino, exploding into the middle of a city street, drawing the attention of everyone there. He's very strong. You can't be alone. Let's see if you can handle this. Tesoro said, starting to use another tactic. As the whole area reacted, suddenly, all the people everywhere felt their bodies freeze, having been affected by the rain of gold. Even Vivi, Nami, Ecchi, and Lucy had been paralyzed. What's happening? Vivi murmured, dazed. Our bodies stopped. What's going on? Nami exclaimed, unable to move. Nay. Ecchi could say nothing else. I was winning the game, this isn't fair. Lucy immediately complained. The only one who seemed to move was Shirahoshi. She looked at the others. Are you alright? You've been paralyzed. Not just you. Everyone on the island has been paralyzed. Luffy is fighting someone in the distance. Shirahoshi murmured. Suddenly, her dendenmushi began to ring. It was Luffy, who had given her the device before leaving the group. Hi, hubby. She answered, smiling as if she weren't in a bizarre situation, while Vivi and Nami seemed to look at her with a bit of irritation. Shirahoshi, do me a favor, cover everyone on this island with seawater. He asked. Shirahoshi thought for a moment and quickly understood. After all, the golden people's bodies could be removed with seawater due to the weakness of the devil fruit. Being a mermaid and having the power of Poseidon and Leviathan, she could be immune to it. Then, Shirahoshi began to unleash her power, flying above the city and swirling her hands, creating a small water tornado that quickly began to spread, generating a light rain that splashed everywhere. Luffy smiled, turned off the dendenmushi, and put it away while watching Shirahoshi in action. Tesoro looked stunned as, beyond the rain, the area began to flood with water falling like rain or even like rivers in various places, invading the casinos. The amount of water Shirahoshi was swirling was immense and seemingly endless. What? How is this possible? Tesoro couldn't believe it. He wanted to use the people to fight against Luffy, even capturing possible crew members present to use as leverage, but now his plan had been thwarted as the entire island was freed from his power. When the water began to hit him, he realized he needed a last resort. Suddenly, all the gold started to wrap around him. I'm going to kill you. I won't become a slave. He shouted as the gold formed a giant. Luffy, observing the transformation, smiled as he saw Tesoro's most powerful form revealed inside the golden giant. Well, this looks like it's getting interesting, he murmured, as his fist began to catch fire. Let's see if you can handle this. In the next moment, Luffy disappeared. Chapter 399, Grand Tesoro 06. The golden giant rose before the city of Grand Tesoro, while the people looked on in fear. Now able to move, they quickly started to flee, drenched in Shirahoshi's water, as the feet of the golden giant created by Tesoro stomped on the ground, immediately cracking it. He looked frustrated, with a bloodied face, toward where Luffy should be, at the entrance of the building still filled with raised debris, until he saw a small purple flash coming from there, but quite luminous, illuminating the area with an ethereal color. When Tesoro narrowed his eyes, in the next moment, he disappeared. And before he could react, his giant suddenly flew backward. When he looked down, he saw flames exploding, feeling the enormous heat, as Luffy punched his stomach so hard that it generated an impact of flames, piercing it with a fire ray, melting all the gold as soon as it came into contact with his flames. The flames continued running through the ship, melting anything they touched, while the giant soon after flew backward, smashing into buildings, and Tesoro was stunned inside it, trying to regain his balance. As he finally stopped flying backward uncontrollably, he ended up crashing into a final building, exploding and as if disintegrating into it like a throne, but all full of debris. The giant raised its arm before placing it to the side, while it had a huge hole in its belly, struggling to get up. But then a figure appeared from above like lightning, kicking its head with the same giant, forcing it down again as it crashed, exploding into the building even more. You really think you can beat me like this, Tesoro? Luffy commented calmly, as he looked down at him, standing on the dented part of the giant's head where he had landed. You think you can stop me here? Tesoro immediately exclaimed, while the golden hand advanced again, but as it approached him, it exploded on impact where Luffy was. But he quickly raised his hand, immediately stopping the fist with a snap. Luffy mocked it as he lifted his hand, appearing to hold the giant hand with one arm after the impact explosion finally became visible. How did someone so strong end up here? Tesoro was frustrated. After all, he wasn't even surprised by Luffy's abilities and strength. He was much stronger than any pirate Tesoro had faced before. He himself had no confidence to win, but his streak of bad luck with someone like this showing up here was frustrating. Luffy continued holding the golden arm and simply jumped up, even pulling the giant along with him. As he turned his body, Luffy lifted it like a jiu-jitsu move, slamming the giant down with his arm over his shoulder, exploding on the ground. We have to get out of here. Quick, to our ships. Something's happening here. We can take the gold now. More and more people were getting scared, while others wanted to take advantage of the situation. The giant tried to get up, but due to the huge hole in its chest, its mobility was no longer the same. And before he could react, Luffy appeared beside his chin and punched with pure strength. This immediately crushed it, sending it flying and being dragged by the punched face, as it crashed into another golden building. Bakura appeared at this moment on the street, looking shocked, seeing Tesoro's enormous golden puppet being punched like that, while Karina was also beside her, looking with her mouth open and eyes wide. Hey, Luffy. What are you doing? At that moment, Nami appeared flapping her wings, while Vivi also accompanied her with her body transformed into air. Shirahoshi also slid through the air, while Lucy and Ecchi also appeared using moonwalk to fly. Ah, about that. Luffy smiled at them as he continued walking toward the destroyed building. I'm dealing with a friend. He commented. Who's your friend here? Immediately the giant made an effort to get out, while Tesoro, all bruised, looked at Luffy frustrated, reaching the level of hatred for this pirate making him see how all his efforts were in vain. Come on, Tesoro, you're too emotional. I just want to invite you to my crew. I'm sure you won't regret it. Luffy commented. I'd rather die. I will never serve anyone again. Tesoro exclaimed. Hey, man, I know you don't have a pretty story, that your life was tough. But that's not the kind of servitude I'm talking about. Don't compare it to those shitty offers from Mary Joey's, they'd make. Luffy commented, but Tesoro didn't even listen. If I can't beat you, at least I'll take revenge on one of your companions and take you down with me. Tesoro said, and the next moment, He tried to punch Luffy's companions in the air as soon as they were within his reach. They were surprised but also prepared. After all, they were much stronger than they were 2 years ago. However, Luffy wasn't about to let something like that happen. Quickly, he moved with a flash, increasing his speed. Tesoro didn't even have a chance to carry out his plan and was caught off guard as his entire world spun around. Luffy broke through the Golden Giant's walls, penetrated through to Tesoro, and pulled him out from the other side, easily shattering Tesoro's armor, before throwing him down with such force that the ground began to give way for over 100 meters, breaking buildings and everything else around him as Tesoro was finally dragged to a halt. Luffy landed on the ground while the giant kneeled behind him with a great explosion, beginning to fall without its master controlling its power. "Hey, man, attacking my companions in front of me? I might not be so kind if someone does that again," Luffy commented before disappearing in the next moment, advancing toward Tesoro. Tesoro was badly injured on the ground and tried to get up, seeing that his arm was broken. "Ah! That bastard!" He began coughing blood, touching his stomach and realizing that several ribs were broken too. "He really got me. So I ended up here," he murmured, looking up at the dark sky. "But I won't give in. I won't go through that again," he muttered with determination once more, seeing flashbacks he didn't want to remember. When he saw Luffy approaching, he quickly created a dagger with the gold he still had nearby and tried to stab his own neck. After all, he preferred death over becoming a slave again, like when he had been a slave to the Tenri Obito for many years. However, just as the blade was mere inches from his neck, he suddenly froze, stopping in place, his eyes trembling but unable to speak. Luffy had once again stopped time with his ability. Luffy whistled as he approached. "Man, you're really going to waste your life like this? You didn't even listen to me yet. You're lucky my ability recharged after a while. It's a pity I can't use it all the time, it has a cooldown limit," Luffy commented, then looked at the man who had been about to kill himself. "Now that you can hear me without doing anything stupid, I'm going to give you my proposal. I don't see why I should force you to join my crew, but you have 3 options. The first, you kill yourself, and I take all your stuff. After all, your gold is very interesting to me. The second, I let you live, but you still don't accept my invitation. You give up everything you have here, since you tried to trick me and steal from me. So, I intend to take everything for myself, and you leave this ship with a goat and anyone else who wants to go with you," Luffy said before continuing with the last option. "And we have the third option, the one I hope you accept, you join my fleet and help me reach the One Piece. After that, we'll wage war on the world, and in that war..." Luffy looked directly at Tesoro as if he knew his past and suffering. "I plan to destroy the world government, marry Joyce, and consequently, the Tenri Obito," Luffy said with a sinister smile, watching Tesoro's stunned expression. "I know this is sudden, but I also know you want revenge against the Tenri Obito. Even though you let them enter here, you hate them deeply. You know I've already killed several of them. I even thought you'd be my fan," Luffy commented. He really believed Tesoro would see him as a hero or something like that. After all, Tesoro was a victim of the Tenri Obito, and Luffy had executed one in front of the whole world during the last war. Then Luffy spoke again. "My proposal is simple. Once I find Roger's treasure, the world government won't sit still. Of course, they lacked before that, but not on the scale of when that treasure is claimed by someone. And we'll fight an intense war that will involve the entire world. I know that we and the Tenri Obito can no longer coexist. That's why I plan to destroy the entire Tenri Obito system and the world government," he said, while Tesoro just listened. "Now I'm going to move your hand away from your neck, and you make your decision," Luffy said, approaching and moving Tesoro's hand, placing him in a position where his current speed wouldn't kill him, and he could even stop the blade. He stepped back from Tesoro and waited only a few seconds for the effect of time at 0.0001 to end in that space. At that moment, Tesoro quickly pushed the knife toward himself but stopped, unable to do it at that distance, as he looked at Luffy cautiously. You really want to do this?" he asked, hesitantly, even with his face covered in blood. "Of course. I admit I've never suffered at their hands, but I know how bad they are. They're the scum of this world, and no one has done anything against them in 800 years. It's time for someone to act in this era. After all, this is my era," Luffy responded firmly. "Why are you doing this? What's your goal?" Tesoro asked, still cautious, wanting to know who Monkey D. Luffy was. "There are many reasons. Maybe I want to free the countries under their oppressive regime and give them autonomy. I want to be the emperor of the sea and for no one to question my sovereignty in this world. I want to create a better world for my children and to live peacefully with my family. I also do it for greed. After all, I want my name to be eternalized, A man needs goals in his life. Some small, others big, and mine is basically to change the history of this world. There are also other reasons I don't fully understand yet. Luffy said, thoughtful about the cryptic things Rayleigh had mentioned during their training a year ago, but he hadn't paid much attention to it. Maybe it's one of these reasons. Or maybe it's all of them at once. But my goal is clear, I want you to help me, Tesoro. That's why I've always been interested in you and why I'm inviting you to join under my flag. Together, I'll give you the chance to get revenge on everything those people did to you. Luffy said. Tesoro seemed to be thinking, evaluating whether Luffy was lying or telling the truth. In the end, he lowered his golden blade, no longer pointing it at his own neck. Chapter 400, Grand Tesoro 07. Luffy was in a room made of gold, analyzing the group standing in front of him, while several people sat beside him, including Nami, Vivi, Shirahoshi, Lucy, and Ecchi. They were facing Tesoro and all the members of his crew, even those Luffy had not encountered until now, like Dice and Tanaka, while Bakura and Karina, Nami's friend, were also present. Well, let's begin. It's a pleasure to meet you all. As you know, I am Monkey D. Luffy, an emperor of the sea. Luffy declared, as the world already considered him one, and he himself affirmed his status as an emperor, looking at them with confidence that he could destroy them all if they dared to challenge him, since that's how 4 emperors acted. Yes. Tesoro murmured, not bothering to introduce himself due to their previous meeting with John while he was fully bandaged after getting hurt multiple times by Luffy. After all, he had not only injuries but several broken bones as well. The rest remained silent, just observing how the situation unfolded. And you want us to join your fleet? Tesoro commented, speaking on behalf of all his comrades. Yes, I want you to take Grand Tesoro out of these waters and bring it to my territory, where I'll gather all my islands together so we can concentrate and organize ourselves more efficiently. Luffy said, while Tesoro watched him intently, tapping the table with his finger in a thoughtful rhythm before addressing the straw hat. Are you serious about that? You won't back down? After all, as far as I know, no one in this world has ever gone against those people. He spoke, waiting for Luffy to show confidence. Even the Pirate King never got close to what you're planning to do. Yes, this war is inevitable. After I find the One Piece. Luffy said. And why are you so confident about finding an island that no one has found in the last 2 decades? Tesoro asked, and Luffy understood his question. Simple. Luffy began. To reach Laugh Tale, you need to have the 4 road poneglyphs, as that's the key to finding the island. He said. After those words, he surprised everyone with that information, even his crew seemed unaware of it. You're serious, Luffy? Nami stood up from her chair at that moment and looked at him, stunned, while asking, as Luffy had not shared that information until now. Yes. There are 4 red poneglyphs that are very well guarded, even for me. That's why this war against 4 emperors will be necessary. We'll get 2 of them at once. Luffy said confidently. One is in Wano, in Kaido's possession, and the other is in Whole Cake Island, in Big Mom's possession. Our goal is simple, take them both down and pave the way to get the poneglyphs. He declared. There was the third one, which they would obtain with relative ease, as it was In's, and Luffy knew how easily they could befriend the minks. And part of our crew is already heading there. But the last one will be a bit more problematic. I don't know its location, but I believe it's related to Shanks or perhaps the Island of the Giants. Luckily, I have Brogy and Dory, and with both on my side, it will be easier to enter Elbaf, though I'm not sure if it's really in Shanks' territory. After all, Elbaf is always described as one of the strongest and most mysterious islands in the world. Luffy was debating internally about the last poneglyph. I see. So we need that to find Roger's treasure? Tesoro asked. Yes, and we need the information that those 4 poneglyphs will give us. But this is just the beginning. I doubt we'll only have to deal with a few pirate enemies. Chaos will be imminent. But anyway, that's a conversation for another time. What I want now is your confirmation, Tesoro. I know you've been listening to me until now, so it's my turn to hear from you. Luffy said. After all, they had only had an initial conversation, and Tesoro had already calmed down a bit and given up on killing himself, knowing that Luffy wouldn't be extreme and had given his word. Alright, I will join your fleet. He confirmed the next moment, knowing he would be under someone again, but this time it wouldn't be so bad, so he continued. As long as I get what I want, which is finally being able to take revenge on those people I've always hated my entire life. I'm angry at myself for just watching them without really hurting them when they stepped foot here. But I didn't do anything because I'm not stupid enough to want to kill them and have everything I own destroyed. Tesoro hadn't finished yet. Now, will I have permission to kill them? And if the world government tries to destroy me, can I count on you after that? Tesoro asked, while a smile appeared on Luffy's face. Of course. After all, we are a crew specialized in causing chaos and killing Tenri Obitos. So feel free. Luffy responded with a smile. I'm hungry. Lucy's voice emerged beside him, as she seemed quite bored with the conversation. Well, could you get my sister some food? Luffy asked, while Tesoro nodded for Karina to take her to the kitchen. It's fine if we stay a bit longer, right? After all, I want you to head to Dressrosa in the meantime. Those waters already belong to me. Wait there until we finish our course, as we need to visit a few more islands. Luffy said, concluding the conversation. Alright. Feel free. But can I ask something? Tesoro knew that Luffy would win a fortune by playing again, but he still had great curiosity about something, and as Luffy nodded for him to continue, he asked. Tell me, how do you manage to touch gold and simply disappear? He asked. Luffy smiled. Well, that's my secret. He simply replied, even though he hadn't taken any more gold since their last fight, he had still profited a lot from the gold he absorbed as Tesoro threw it at him. His system now had a good balance, which he would use later. After that, Shirahoshi clung to Luffy's back while Vivi, Nami, and Ecchi accompanied him as they returned to the casinos. Well, my wives. Luffy said, grabbing Vivi and Nami by the waist, while Shirahoshi kept her arms around his neck in her usual spot, before continuing. Now let's play a game. It's time to show that your husband is a great player. He said with a smile, heading straight for one of the casinos. Ecchi was left behind, but Luffy gave him a task after demanding a few extra things from Tesoro. Ecchi then left for another place. After the initial scare, as many ships had already left the island in fear of the fight between Luffy and Tesoro, things finally calmed down. There was still destruction among the broken buildings and a massive golden giant fallen in a destroyed part of the city, but fortunately, there were no deaths, only a few people injured by debris during the fight. People soon calmed down and began to understand what had happened. They were shocked by the presence of 4 emperors on the ship. Some immediately ran in a panic to leave the island, while others stayed out of curiosity to see Monkey D. Luffy, the legendary pirate of this post-war era. The manager was surprised to see Luffy, Nami, Vivi, and Shirahoshi playing without disguises, as Luffy had his hat back on his head, and the girls were no longer wearing masks, revealing their identities. He watched with fear, different from the anger he had toward Luffy while with Bakura. After all, Luffy was playing again, and the manager feared that if the roulette didn't land on the number Luffy wanted, he might kill him. After all, the 4 emperors could easily do that. If they didn't like something, you were dead, and there was nothing you could do about it. Meanwhile, Ecchi went to complete the task Luffy had given him. He headed to the underground area, where there were numerous prisoners kept by Tesoro after deceiving them and forcing them into debt, ultimately imprisoning them. Are you saying this place now belongs to 4 emperors? And he's freeing us? One man asked, surprised. Nay. Yes, you can leave. The fishman responded, while Ecchi grabbed toy weapons filled with seawater and began spraying everyone with his 6 arms. He released the gold that had bound them, as it had lost the effect of Tesoro's ability. Nay. Well, you can't take any gold. Otherwise, you'll have to pay for it. He said in a firm tone, while the prisoners quickly nodded, eager to embrace their newfound freedom. After all, the last thing they wanted was to see gold again. Ecchi seemed satisfied with that as a few men approached him. I heard about Monkey D. Luffy a year ago, before getting trapped here. Is he our savior? One of them asked, and Ecchi nodded. I wish I could repay him. Please accept me into your group. They began to kneel before Ecchi, who was taken aback by this. I'll have to talk to him first. Ecchi responded as more and more people gathered. Meanwhile, on the surface, as the other members of Tesoro's crew were freeing the children at Luffy's request, he continued playing and winning, surrounded by the women he loved and desired this time. Being the true player, Nami was very happy as Luffy handed her more chips, but not in a demeaning way like gamblers in Las Vegas would with women. After all, he didn't want to sexualize his wives in front of others. At that moment, his sister joined them after eating a lot. She appeared with a huge belly, looking bloated, causing Luffy to fall to the floor in shock. The only person who could knock him down at this moment was his own sister. He got up a moment later, knowing it was just a temporary effect, and soon she would absorb all the food and slim down. He played until he grew tired, at which point Ecchi called for him. Luffy went to see the prisoners, analyzing them as they filled the streets, pleading to join his fleet. Well, give them a ship. Tell them to wait at Dressrosa. I doubt they'll want to stay at Grand Tesoro much longer after everything that happened. Luffy commented, knowing they didn't harbor intense hatred toward Tesoro. It would be good to keep them away, as he wanted to test them, seeing that they weren't too bad. The children were also freed, and Vivi approached them, thanking them. Luffy, what are we going to do with them? She asked, a little sad after hearing that some had nowhere to go and didn't even remember their homes. She must be thinking about Sinbad at this moment. Luffy murmured, looking at Vivi with teary eyes. We'll take them to Dressrosa and take care of them until we figure out what else we can do. Luffy declared. In any case, let's get ready to head back to the ship we left at sea. Luffy returned to the others. Hey, those guys aren't going to mess with the ship's vault, are they? Nami asked, approaching as she complained, running toward Luffy while carrying bags full of chips he had won. I doubt they'll do that. Luffy remarked in reference to the two-piece group, who were still on the ship, tasked with guarding it. But Luffy knew everything was fine, as he had finished everything in just a few hours, from leaving to defeating Tesoro. So, Nami went to exchange the gold while the others prepared to leave. I'll do something first, Luffy said, asking them to get the ship ready, as he went off in another direction on the island. Karina ended up organizing a ship to separate the former prisoners of Grand Tesoro, as the ship began heading toward Dressrosa. Luffy found a secluded spot on the island and purchased from his system a small table and 2 chairs with a bottle of wine on it. He then sat down and calmly opened the bottle, pouring himself a drink until a shadow appeared, accompanied by the sound of high-heeled footsteps. Luffy just smiled. I thought you were going to reject me for a moment, he said playfully, while the person remained silent, continuing to approach. Well, I hope you're not agreeing to this just because I'm your boss now, right? I was hoping you'd come because I'm a lucky, charming guy who knows how to make a lady's heart race with emotion, he commented. Don't forget to add narcissist, the feminine voice replied. What can I say? Am I not a lucky guy? He teased with a smile as he looked at the well-dressed woman in front of him. Lady Bakura. Maybe you are all of that, she murmured, admitting with a bit of embarrassment. After all, she was sexually attracted to him after he defeated Tesoro, and he knew it. He hadn't missed the chance to hold her in his arms before leaving this place. Anyway, let's continue our night. After all, you owe me a date, don't you? He teased her, and they spent a few hours together. It didn't take long for them to get closer, more intimately, with Luffy charming her in every way he could. Bakura was already emotionally shaken by all the events of the night. Luffy easily removed her clothes after purchasing a bed and making sure no one would approach that side of the island, and they made love right there. Where's Luffy? I hope he's not with another woman right now. Nami grumbled aboard the Black Pearl, waiting with the others on the ship for their husbands so they could sleep together. Back to Luffy, after seeing the woman wrapping herself in a blanket, covering her naked body while Bakura slept soundly, he had indulged a little with the more fruit model, Amplify Human Devil Fruit while playing with her, to the point where he had to cancel the sound and noise in the area due to her loud moaning. Giving the woman a farewell kiss, Luffy leapt through the air, leaving Grand Tesoro to return to the ship. After all, he still had to satisfy his wives that very night. Meanwhile, Bakura couldn't help but smile as her eyes opened, quite pleased, despite having just slept with a man she had met only a few hours ago. Chapter 401, Kingdom of Prudence 01. The Kingdom of Prudence is located in a part of the New World, between the beginning and the middle of those waters, a little past Dressrosa. It is also part of the world government. Most of the kingdom was occupied by rural areas, with small villages scattered across the island, and there was a large capital at the center of the country. For Prudence, the economy revolved around all kinds of things, from fishing to agriculture and trade of products exported and imported from other kingdoms. A curious aspect of the kingdom was its strange castle in the middle of the capital, which seemed to take on the appearance of the current king. For as soon as he took the throne, the castle had completely changed, resembling the king himself and his fighting style, with the roof raising 2 arms with boxing gloves. He was recognized by all inside and outside of Prudence as a powerful and strong man, whose punches could destroy an entire city. Everyone in this kingdom took pride in him. While the king, Elizabello too, was now in his throne room, talking with his ministers, he was seated on his enormous chair, still wearing his boxing gloves and fighter shorts, with a lack of a shirt showing his bare chest, wearing only a cape and a crown on his head, as if he were ready to fight at any moment. My king, we must prepare to leave the kingdom in the coming months. After all, the summit of all the kingdoms that are part of the world government will be gathering at Mary Joyce, murmured his minister. Yes, I am well aware of that, but I don't know why I feel that something is going to happen before that, he murmured, feeling a strange sensation over the past few days. It was a feeling he couldn't deny, some sort of warning, as he sighed and looked out the window, seeing his kingdom in the distance. I know what worries you, my king. The new world is really in turmoil. We don't know what will happen in these waters, and even Prudence could be affected by the conflicts happening everywhere. Not to mention, there are rumors of a great battle brewing in Wano, as we all know, A fight involving 3-4 emperors that will decide the future of the new world," said the minister, showing open concern. "Yes, it's true. Perhaps I'm thinking too much about this and worrying about what could happen to all the kingdoms. Maybe I'm mistaken, and this is just reminding me to demand some solution from the world government. After all, the new world has become more chaotic than in the last 20 years. He responded as they continued to talk. At that moment, above the kingdom, a shadow was flying through the sky, passing through some clouds. The day was sunny, but there were a certain number of clouds in the sky. The large shadow began to reflect the sunlight due to its golden color, as Enel controlled the object flying calmly for the past few days, finally reaching his destination since leaving Black Pearl. Enel's ark was approaching the capital of the Kingdom of Prudence, as they had been ordered to do, with Luffy giving a mission to each of the groups that had scattered throughout the New World. "A bit too high up here," Perona murmured, looking down while floating and observing the kingdom with curiosity. "You don't even look like someone who's been to Skypiea then," Domino murmured while also gazing down. "Let's just get this over with. We need to get back to the master. I'm sure he'll love my new explosive cookies. He'll feel an explosion of flavor," Baby 5 said with a proud tone, while Perona and Domino looked at the woman smoking a cigarette as if she were an idiot. "Let's follow the orders then." Domino, wearing a military uniform with a straw hat symbol on her chest, said in a serious tone as she adjusted her glasses. "TSK." Enel had been controlling the ark the whole time, sitting in the middle of the ship, without mingling with the demon women during the entire trip. He ignored them and looked at the kingdom below with his incredible observation haki, observing what was happening below as if he were a god. "It seems our target is in the castle," he murmured. "What is this?" Elizabello too quickly sensed someone observing him with his semi-developed haki, but it was enough to notice eyes spying on him as if he were nothing, which scared him, unable to imagine how arrogant this person must be. "Did something happen, my king?" The ministers quickly noticed the strange behavior of their king and became concerned. "Something is going to happen." He now spoke seriously, rising from his chair and looking out the windows. Meanwhile, the cloud beneath the ark drifted away, and a child playing ball in the middle of the street felt the sunlight shining on him, only for another shadow to quickly block it. He noticed a very strange shape for a cloud, as his eyes looked up with one hand trying to shield his eyes from the sun. But he couldn't see anything other than the bright sunlight. Back on the ark, Baby 5, looking at the miniature city from over 4,000 meters above, took her first steps in her heels and made outfit. "Well, anyway, let's finish this," Baby 5 said, simply jumping off the ark and descending towards the ground while flying using moonwalk. Domino shrugged and jumped from the ark right after her, in free fall, while Enel, without saying a word, transformed into lightning, leaving a trail in the air, speeding past them thanks to his devil fruit and heading towards the castle. The only one who remained was Perona, who didn't seem too happy about being left behind with her ghosts. Hey. Damn it, I'm going to," Perona murmured, soon flying after them. The entire capital heard a loud thunderclap in the open sky, with only a few clouds, exploding straight down toward the king's castle. Enel caused an explosion as soon as he hit the ground, watching closely for any movement inside the castle and waiting patiently. The women soon arrived, landing nearby. This immediately alerted everyone inside the castle, and the king looked out the window, seeing 4 individuals standing in front of his castle, with one of them inside a crater from the lightning explosion, calmly looking up at him. "Who are they?" he murmured, simply jumping out the window, unable to recognize them from that distance as he approached, not that he had much choice. "Hey, let's go," the other ministers said, following him down alongside their king. When they got close to the group, one by one they began to recognize them. "Who are you?" one of the ministers asked, frowning as he observed the group. "I know who they are. They're the Straw Hats," the king said, narrowing his eyes. "Domino. We're here to negotiate," Domino said. "Negotiate? What do you want?" the king asked, not liking the situation one bit. "Simple. Our captain desires a meeting with you in Dressrosa. He just wants to talk, but he said that even if it's just for a conversation, he still wants to meet you in person," Perona said, turning her face arrogantly. "You think you can come to my kingdom and tell me what to do?" the king murmured with irritation, clenching his fists. He would never accept that. "Well, if you don't agree, we'll have to take you down and drag you by force, inferior being," Enel said in a disdainful tone. "How dare you call the king an inferior being, you pirate?" one of the ministers shouted, enraged, drawing a sword from his waist. He seemed to be a knight as well. "Humphrey, mortals," Enel murmured and attacked. Suddenly, a bolt of lightning fell from the sky onto the group, catching the king and the others by surprise. Only the king managed to escape, the others were electrocuted. And Elizabello too looked on with anger. "Well, Let's finish this. We just have to take him down. Onel said, walking toward him. Alright. Baby 5 said as she transformed her arms into weapons. Domino grabbed her whip. Meanwhile, Perona crossed her arms and turned her face away, not wanting to get involved just yet. The king is fighting. Listen, the king is facing pirates who have invaded our country. The palace guards who witnessed everything began to run and shout, while more guards were called. The townspeople, going about their daily tasks, wondered what that lightning strike was and looked fearfully at the king's strange castle, questioning what would happen next. At that moment, explosions erupted in the castle courtyard, catching everyone by surprise, as lightning strikes and blasts occurred, sending debris flying. All of this happened as Baby 5, Domino, and Enel fought against the king, who quickly tried to punch them. He was able to defend himself from Baby 5 and Domino, but Enel was something entirely different for him to handle. Enel simply appeared beside the king and hit him at a speed Isabella II couldn't properly react to. The king clenched his teeth in anger, trying to regain his balance after being knocked several meters back before standing up again with a frustrated look. The king tightened his fists and punched with great force, causing the ground beneath them to explode, though he refrained from using his full power. This quickly started an intense battle between them, with the castle walls being destroyed. Perona, from a distance, watched with her ghosts. I'm not getting involved in such a fight. They look like a bunch of idiots. She muttered mockingly. Though the king managed to stay on his feet, he wasn't in good condition. Fight one-on-one. He exclaimed after a while, as more guards continued to arrive at the scene. Onel then stepped forward. Very well, mortal. It's time for you to witness the power of a god. He said with an arrogant smile. Baby 5 and Domino didn't argue, knowing all too well about Enel's arrogant nature. Hey, don't interfere either. Otherwise, we won't be friendly. Domino said, looking at the crowd they could easily overwhelm. Remember that the captain ordered us not to kill anyone from this kingdom. It must be preserved. Perona said at the end. The crowd looked at each other, unsure of what to do, while their king was about to fight Enel of the Straw Hats. Come on then, Logia. I'm confident I've developed my armament hockey over the last year. The king said as his fists began to turn black, finally able to strike elemental fruits. Let's begin, mortal. I hope you won't be disappointing either. Enel said in his usual tone as lightning began to manifest around him. In the next moment, the king took the initiative to punch him in midair, while Enel vanished, transforming into lightning and rushing toward the monarch. Chapter 402, Kingdom of Prudence 02. Boom. A giant explosion expanded throughout the castle courtyard as the battle continued with the sound of lightning and blasts, while the king emerged from the smoke, heavily injured. Enel was floating in the air surrounded by lightning, as if he was dealing with someone too easy to handle. He glared at Enel with anger while struggling to breathe, and all the kingdom's soldiers were slightly terrified at the thought of their king losing the fight. King Isabella II is going to lose? They murmured among themselves, watching the scene cautiously. We should help him. Another said, trying to muster some confidence, though it seemed non-existent. Yes. You're right. Trust in the king, and let's handle the other pirates. They then, even at the cost of their lives, rushed to fight against the kingdom's enemies. It looks like I'll have to deal with them. Baby 5 muttered, watching the group run as her arms transformed into weapons. Wait. Perona appeared at that moment, as Enel and the King of Prudence resumed their fight, creating explosions and lightning everywhere. Perona didn't want to interfere, but she knew Baby 5 had a few screws loose and could do something that Luffy had made very clear they shouldn't do, as their captain didn't want any civilians hurt. Take this. Baby 5 didn't seem to hear her and aimed at everyone. You unfunny woman, what are you doing? Perona exclaimed angrily, and just as Baby 5 was about to fire, a ghost passed by her, making a playful sound. In the next moment, Baby 5 was on the ground. Sorry about that. Maybe I'm not a good servant. I should ask Master to turn me into his doormat, so he can wipe his beautiful boots on me, kicking me with those soles. She said, as Perona dropped to the ground a moment later. What kind of low self-esteem wish is that? Perona shouted, her face showing shock with shark-like teeth, even though she already knew Baby 5's ability. This was too much, even for her. Look. The woman's down, time to defeat her. The soldiers quickly shouted, approaching the area, and Perona returned to her serious expression, floating in the air before Domino could act. Go, ghosts! She exclaimed, and hundreds of ghosts began to emerge from her in the next moment, all rushing towards the army of soldiers. In the following moment, they were all hit by them. The sound of thousands of knees hitting the ground echoed as all the men were there, in that position before Perona, who had brought them down without using Conqueror's Hockey. Sorry for being born. I am an amoeba. Maybe I should live with ants. At least then, I'd feel welcomed. I should be a tree instead of a soldier. I feel like air. How can I disappear too? Countless phrases were heard from the crowd. As Perona watched with satisfaction, having brought down all the soldiers, her gaze shifted to the side, and she grimaced in shock. After all, while she held them off, saving everyone from her captain's wrath, Enel and King Elizabello II were still fighting, and at that moment, both were preparing powerful attacks against each other to finish the battle. As they fought, Enel did not have a vision of the future, but now his haki had evolved to the point where he saw an attack that could tear the sky. This immediately left him stunned for a moment, and he quickly distanced himself from the castle, moving to a much higher point where he could gather lightning clouds to face this attack. Meanwhile, the king positioned his arm to the side, beginning to distort the space around him, preparing his super punch. Enel summoned several bolts of lightning as the sky darkened with black clouds, transforming into his giant form made entirely of lightning. He used a power that could destroy the entire capital of this kingdom, and even the king's attack would cause destruction, even though it was aimed at the sky. But he had no choice. He would have to sacrifice part of the city to save the whole place, realizing that the Logia user was getting quite serious. Perona, near the king, was frightened by what she saw, knowing full well that all her efforts to protect the city and its citizens were at risk, something Luffy had made very clear he didn't want to happen. Now they were at the mercy of destruction. She was completely terrified. So you're telling me that the kingdom of Prudence's city was destroyed? Luffy's vision passed through Perona's mind as she tried to imagine him hearing that. In the next moment, after hearing it, Luffy would start smacking his fist into his hand with a sadistic grin, before transforming into his hybrid form and beating everyone up, something Perona definitely didn't want to experience. She snapped out of her thoughts and looked angrily at both who were about to unleash these high-magnitude attacks. What are you doing? Stop that immediately. Stop, stop, stop. Perona began shouting in the air, throwing a tantrum, while Baby 5, who was still lying on the ground, watched her. Domino, with a furrowed brow, didn't like the situation either, but neither of them listened to the ghost girl. They continued charging their main attacks, ready to launch in the next moment. I said, stop. She exclaimed again, immediately flying into the air until reaching a certain height in the middle of the city. She spread her arms as her body began to be enveloped by a gray hue, positioning herself between the two attacks. In the next moment, both the king and Enel were surprised by the appearance of a massive ghost over the capital, which emerged from Perona's body as she released her powers. The enormous ghost made sounds like her other ghosts. If people were already scared of the huge lightning forming in the sky and the tremor coming from the castle, seeing a ghost threw them into even more panic. They started running, screaming, trying to flee from it as quickly as possible. Enel and the king, although surprised, didn't stop their attacks, which were almost ready to be launched. Perona, angry at the center of the ghost, clenched her teeth. I said, stop. For the third time, she shouted, moving only two arms inside the ghost in a hand gesture. The giant ghost simply began to swell like a balloon and exploded, and in the next moment, a wind blast spread so fast that no one could react. Even the king and Enel in the sky were hit, along with the entire capital by this gust of wind. Their attacks stopped immediately. In the next moment, Enel simply began to fall, and the king stopped concentrating his power, dropping to his knees. Enel, still floating and falling, had an unhappy expression. Maybe I was too hasty. I shouldn't be a god. I rushed things. Maybe I should be a fly. He muttered in depression as his aura darkened. I shouldn't be the king of this kingdom. Maybe I should be a fish for the fishermen to catch. At least that way I'd be useful to someone. The king muttered, also kneeling, with the same desolate mood. Even Domino was on the ground, not spared from Perona's attack, while she and Baby 5 remained collapsed side by side. I'm so useless. Maybe I should ask the captain to make me his prisoner. She murmured. But it wasn't limited to just the four of them. Domino and Baby 5, the king of Prudence, and Enel. As the entire city was affected. All the people, of all ages and genders, were kneeling on the ground, exclaiming all kinds of depressing thoughts into the air. Perona sighed. She had brought an entire kingdom to its knees. More or less in depression, but still, she had saved the city. Now, all that was left was to wait for everyone to return to normal. In the next moment, they were inside the castle, while Baby 5 and Domino had already recovered. Enel and the king were still kneeling, as Perona had to use her powers again a short while ago. It was at that moment that they stood up. You bastard! The king said, raising his fist. Come, mortal being! Enel exclaimed before two ghost attacks from each of their bodies sent them falling to their knees again. Can you stop fighting? Perona exclaimed with a grimace, while all the king's ministers and guards could only look at the woman in fear. After all, even though she hadn't created a giant lightning bolt, she was certainly the strongest person there, and no one wanted to experience that feeling again. Even Baby 5 and Domino looked at her with some apprehension. Things calmed down a moment later, and the city had become quieter, despite the uncertainty of what could happen now with the arrival of the pirates. Then, Verona took the lead of the entire group. "Listen, King of Prudence, we are here to deliver this. You just have to go to Dressrosa, as the captain requested. He's not asking for your kingdom, nor your crown, nor anything else. He just wants to talk to you. I hope you at least do that and come with us, understood?" Verona exclaimed, impatient, while the king looked at the letter sent by Luffy. Their mission was simply to deliver this letter and bring the king to the captain, who was probably elsewhere now, sailing toward his next objective. However, they caused a commotion with the fight soon after. "Fine," the king murmured, looking cautiously at the girl, with little choice, as even the Straw Hat could retaliate if he tried anything against his crewmate. "That's great. I'm sure our captain is a man of his word and won't easily be aggressive with you, even if you refuse," Domino said. "TSK. You can come. But don't get in the way," Onel mocked, not wanting to fight with someone so troublesome who had such precise aim. "Fine, I'll do this at least. But let me make it clear to your captain that I will not hand over my kingdom," he said with determination, while everyone nodded. "All right. Now let's go and stop fighting," Verona exclaimed, and everyone, with no choice, began heading back to the golden ship that had landed in the courtyard after Enel returned. "Wait, my king. You're leaving just like that?" The ministers were worried about Prudence without a king. "Take care of things while I'm gone. I need to resolve this, and I'll be back soon," he said to them, and his ministers nodded in agreement with the idea. "We will be waiting for you then, Your Majesty," they replied, while the king nodded and boarded the golden ship along with the other Straw Hats as they began to soar into the sky, heading for Dressrosa. Chapter 403, Great Fleet of Yanta Maria. On the high seas, a very beautiful ship, used by the Tenri Albedos, was sailing the sea with its old celestial dragon flag removed, while the new flag was nothing but white cloth. A few kilometers away, on the horizon's edge, there was a line of ships also navigating those waters. One of the men from the main ship looked through a telescope at the distant ship. "Captain," he called from the top of the ship. "I see a ship in the distance, but too far to see the details." Orlumbus, the leader of the entire fleet, said, trying to look afar, but not managing to see much. "The flag is white, Captain. But the ship is very beautiful. Seems to belong to a very rich noble." The man spoke while the captain nodded to that. "And they are heading towards us? Did they not see our fleet?" Orlumbus said, a bit surprised by this possibility. The name of this group of ships was the Great Fleet of Yanta Maria, formed by 53 ships and 4,300 men, as they navigate through the New World pursuing their objectives. "They keep coming this way, Captain." The man spoke as he saw the noble ship continuing to approach at high speed without fear, and by this point, they had already been discovered. "Who are these? If they really have the guts, let them come and we'll show them the power of the Great Fleet of Yanta Maria if they are here to fight." Orlumbus spoke while continuing to look at the ship. Then, the ship began to approach ever closer to the fleet cutting through the sea, showing no fear or hesitation. The 53 ships stopped to see who it would be after the order of the captain or admiral of this fleet. The ship was occupied by just 4 women, none other than a group that had split after their captain assigned distinct tasks to the groups. This group was Yamato, Nojiko, Bonnie, and Robin, who looked curiously at the fleet as they came close. "We finally made it here," Yamato said with a smile after a problem in the middle of the sea. "Yes. I thought we would continue lost and would have to return to Dressrosa with the rest of the crew's vivre card. But thanks to Nojiko who managed to steer the ship," Robin commented as she managed to stabilize it back on the right course. After Luffy handed out the instructions where the Great Fleet of Yanta Maria would be following information he collected with the Baroque Orcs and other organizations in the New World. Nojiko didn't just listen to her sister her whole life. She might not have Nami's talent, but that didn't stop her from learning a few things about navigation. Now their ship finally reached the fleet. "So many people. Are we going to fight all of them?" Bonnie murmured, looking at the 53 ships. "Well, our captain asked to talk to them. If it doesn't work out," Robin commented before opening a smile, "then we'll have to invite them by force." Robin commented, "It looks like there's no way around it. Let's go, let's talk to them," Yamato said in the end, approaching the edge of the ship. She saw a large man with long blonde hair and beards approaching wearing characteristic pirate clothes in red and gold, observing them with curiosity, while his men stayed behind him. "Identify yourselves and state your intentions," he said. After all, it was just one ship approaching all of his, so he didn't immediately give the order to open fire, first wanting to know what their intentions were. "Captain." Someone there immediately called his man with quite a scared face. "That woman with white hair is Kaido's daughter, The Straw Hat's wife, and with a bounty of 1.8 billion. He exclaimed among the men, pointing to Yamato, while scaring everyone hearing this. It was not surprising seeing everyone there, being surprised and quite shaken. Even the captain looked surprised, frowning. The other two women. They are all members of the Straw Hats, Captain. What shall we do? The men exclaimed while the world still had not recognized Bonnie as a member of the crew. Orlumba still tried to reason. After all, they were not attacking them immediately. State exactly what you want? He said. It was Nojiko who took the initiative for the conversation, being the most prepared for something diplomatic. We are here by order of our captain to look for you. She began. And what does your captain want with us? Orlumbus murmured, not very fond of the situation. Luffy wants to summon you to Dressrosa. He wants to invite you to join the Straw Hat Fleet after talking with him. Nojiko explained. Join the Straw Hat Fleet? The men of the fleet looked surprised to hear this, while they looked at the captain, waiting for his response. This can't be. It must be some kind of joke. Why would we join your crew? We have our own group and you are about to go to war against 2-4 Emperor Su. Do you want to use my ships and my men? Are you desperate? Orlumbus burst out indignantly. It was Yamato who spoke this time. We don't want to treat you as cannon fodder in the upcoming war. Luffy does not intend to put any newly recruited members in this war, but he wants to start strengthening everyone. All we ask is that you go to Dressrosa and talk with the captain. He is very interested in you and just wants to talk. She made it clear. The captain was thoughtful about this, while the members of his crew waited anxiously for the response, knowing they could end up fighting right there with a woman worth almost 2 billion. Finally, he looked at the group and said, "All right. I will talk to your captain in Dressrosa." Orlumbus spoke, surprising some who expected him to disagree. "If it's just a talk, I have no problem, but I will not join your crew or fleet by force." He completed with a stern tone. "Great. I'm sure he will respect your decision as long as you at least talk to him," Nojiko said, and Orlumbus nodded. Well, these things were resolved quite quickly. "Foo-fa-foo," Robin commented, laughing. "Yes. That was quite simple," Bonnie murmured, impressed with the speed of the negotiations. "Let's head back, then. We were just supposed to deliver the message. We hope to meet you again in Dressrosa," Yamato said quickly. "Bonnie, can you take the helm and turn the ship?" Nojiko asked as Bonnie nodded and went to it, beginning to turn the ship and heading to another side, opting not to accompany the fleet as their ship would be faster, and the ship of the Tenri Obito that Luffy had killed at the end of East Blue began to move away. "Captain." A man approached Orlumbus, still curious about him having accepted the proposal so easily. "I know you are wondering, but look at that group. They have a woman who is the daughter of that monster. What could we do? It was either this or our destruction," Orlumbus finally said, recognizing that he couldn't fight against Kaido's daughter and, even more, that there were others there, less powerful than Yamato but equally dangerous. All had quite impressive bounties a year ago and he didn't know if they had become even stronger, which made him even more worried about a possible fight. "I understand. And what will we do now, Captain?" the man insisted. "Well, we have no choice. Let's organize our fleet and head for Dressrosa. Get ready, everyone," Orlumbus exclaimed, fulfilling his word. Quickly, his men began to move, preparing to meet the man most talked about in the world currently. Meanwhile, the noble ship continued sailing through the seas and it wasn't long before other ships appeared on the horizon. Nojiko looked to the side, narrowing her eyes. "I sense ill intentions coming from that side. It seems that this ship intends to attack us," Yamato said, seeing that they were approaching more and more. "It seems there are pirates, bounty hunters, and criminals approaching," Robin said after putting an eye to see the ship in the distance. "They think we are a commercial ship," she completed, warning the rest of the crew. "Ah, look at the noble ship unprotected. Just as our informants had said they saw it in these waters. This will be a good profit." One of the pirates celebrated, believing they had found an easy target. More and more ships began to appear. There were 6 ships believing they had found easy prey to ambush. "Well, they don't seem very strong," Yamato commented, placing her hand at the height of the ship. "Hey, Robin, shall we handle this together?" she asked. Robin nodded, as Yamato grabbed her weapon, already close to the other ships. They looked somewhat surprised to see a woman appear at the front on the bow. Yamato gave a brief glance as she raised and swung her club, releasing a cold energy into the sea. The next moment, the surface of the sea began to freeze, advancing quickly towards the ships, leaving everyone surprised as their ships stopped, trapped in the ice. "Hey, what is this?" "They froze the sea," the pirates exclaimed, stunned to see such a bizarre scene. And it didn't stop there. Robin, wanting to quickly end the situation, began to create several hands on the surface of the ice. The hands were much larger than normal, about 2 meters tall, and the next moment, hundreds of them emerged in front of the noble ship and forming a shape of a gun, began firing, crushing the ships the next moment. The pirates could only watch, unable to do anything. Their ships began to explode and disintegrate, while the ice destroyed everything in its path, with such force that all the debris was sent to the bottom of the sea. Well, that was simple. Let's continue. Nojiko spoke with a bored expression, while Bonnie continued to control the helm. We're going to take days like this. Is there a way to go faster? Nojiko? Yamato asked while looking at the girl. Yes. Nojiko murmured as she began to move towards the back of the ship, looking at Bonnie. Just steer the ship to the right side, she requested. Wait. You're going to do that? I'm going to get lost, Bonnie exclaimed quite insecurely. Don't worry, trust in yourself. Nojiko simply spoke and went to the back of the ship before tying a belt prepared by her. She adjusted the belt to hold the ship and pointed her hands forward towards the sea. Bonnie, being the closest, could do nothing but put earplugs in her ears and prepare to control the helm. The next moment, with her palms open, she began to generate explosions, making her body go backwards while she continued firing and firing. The next moment, with the explosions, the ship began to advance at high speed forward and it quickly moved against the horizon, no longer appearing as a sail-driven ship that depended on the wind. And thus, they set off, returning to Dressrosa with their simple mission completed. Chapter 404, Ideo's Pirates. How is he? The feminine voice asked with some anxious tone, looking at Chopper, who was now keeping his stethoscope in his ear while placing the sound amplification part on the woman's belly. Your and Luffy's child is doing very well. He's developing, and he seems to be a healthy boy, Chopper said, looking excited about it as well, since he had also helped take care of Luffy's other children. How much time do I have until our boy is born? You asked. In 6 months, you will give birth to him, Chopper said with a small smile. Well, that's great, she murmured, happy to know that. She already knew it was a boy, with Luffy being able to see it through his observation hockey, ever since he sensed a part of him growing inside her womb. Everything seemed fine until they started hearing explosions outside, making the room shake a little. The ship they were on at the moment was the noble ship from the Goa Kingdom that Luffy had stolen. They had found the ship in the middle of the sea, and it was the crew they had been searching for after Luffy's instructions. But as Yuta was already having a checkup to see how her pregnancy was progressing, they stayed put. It seems things didn't go as planned, Chopper commented. Let's go outside and see what happened, Yuta said as she left, covering her belly again with her dress, while Chopper also packed up his medical equipment. The two left the medical room and headed to the deck. It didn't take long for them to witness the scene outside where their ship was docked next to another one flying a Jolly Roger. On this pirate ship, there were a bunch of people lying on the ground, most of them looking grilled after being burned by Reiju's attacks, who was also present. It looks like things escalated to this point, Usopp commented, looking at all the bodies lying on the ground, while he and Reiju were the only ones standing and perfectly fine. As soon as they reached the ship, they had no flags, and Ideo's pirates thought it was a merchant or noble ship, but it was strange as it didn't bear any insignia on its completely white sail. Usopp introduced himself as a member of the Straw Hat crew, delivering the message of his captain's invitation, inviting them to Dressrosa. This immediately made the crew of the ship scoff at the invitation. After all, they didn't want to be ordered around by anyone, let alone have to go to a four emperors because he was asking them to come to Dressrosa. But since it was mandatory from Luffy to at least have them in his newly conquered territory, they engaged in battle. Luffy wouldn't force them, but he wanted to talk to everyone, even if it meant forcing them to at least meet him. After all, they were potential members of his future fleet. He had decreed that each group of his crew would hunt down each of the crews that had originally become Monkey D. Luffy's fleet, because it would add another level of power to his current strength while allowing him to control the seas. After all, he couldn't be everywhere at the same time. His fleet and power were much greater than the original Straw Hats. So, hunting them down one by one, he sent each group of his crew to search for them. This group, formed by Usopp, Chopper, Yuta, and Reiju, was tasked with finding 2 pirate groups. The first was the one before them, the pirates led by the captain of the Longa-Urn tribe, Ideo. But his crew wasn't made up solely of his tribe, known for their exceptionally long arms, as it was a mix of various other members, even including one from the Long-Leg tribe, with the rest being ordinary humans. It was an impressive crew, with some members standing out among them, even though they didn't show much power right now, having been defeated by Usopp and Reiju. But they were still brave enough to fight. Everything was silent at that moment before Chopper sighed. I think we overdid it. Hey Chopper, can you help us? Everyone's a little hurt, Usopp said. A little hurt? Chopper exclaimed, making a face from the other ship. Don't worry about that, Raja said as she stepped on the floor, starting to generate flames all over the ship without burning its hull, while helping to regenerate all the members of Ideo's pirates. Well, I guess that's pretty useful. Usopp murmured. Now let's wait for them to wake up. After that, they ended up returning to their current ship, while Raja went to the kitchen to prepare something, coming back with a tray of some treats and fruit. While Chopper and Usopp were playing cards in the middle of the deck, Yuta sat at a distance by herself, feeling a bit of the sea breeze touch her belly as she hummed a melody. Raja then approached her. Food? But that didn't stop Usopp from exclaiming as he looked at the delicious dessert Raja had prepared. This isn't for you, but for our future mother. She needs to feed her child. Raja said in a neutral tone as she passed by them, while Chopper could only look longingly at the pudding being taken to Yuta. She approached the pregnant woman and offered the tray. Here. She said. Yuta looked at her, smiling as she took the food. Thank you. Yuta said. It's nothing. You need to eat and take care of that child growing inside you. Raja stated with a small smile. And you, don't you plan on having one too? Yuta asked curiously, eating the pudding with desire, while looking at the cook who was part of her husband's harem. I took that herb, like most of the women who share a bed with Luffy. Raja replied, as she didn't plan to have children and use a natural contraceptive herb that the people of Skypiea had to prevent pregnancy. She didn't want the responsibility right now, and she, along with most of the women, chose to use the herb due to all the confusion and turmoil they were about to face at sea. But that doesn't mean I don't want to be a mother. She continued. Maybe I'd like to have a few brats. Raja couldn't help but smile as she looked toward the horizon. But I want everything to calm down first. She didn't want to give her children the same kind of childhood she had, not that Luffy would ever be like her father. She would never believe that, but it had left her a bit traumatized, and she didn't even want to imagine the possibility of her children experiencing the kind of life she and Sanji had in Germa 66. I'm sure Luffy wouldn't mind having a bunch of kids. Yuta responded with a smile. Raja nodded and began to leave, before returning to the kitchen and later coming out again with food for Usopp and Chopper, the latter being quite excited to have pudding to eat as well. On the pirate ship, one of them finally stirred. Huh, what happened? Ideo finally woke up with a huge headache, surrounded by the fallen bodies of his comrades, all defeated. He began to remember what had happened when some of the Straw Hats came to his ship, giving some orders, which he mocked, and they ended up in a conflict, only to be miserably defeated. Damn. They're monsters. Ideo thought as his gaze fell to the side, where the noble ship still stood. At that moment, someone already aware of his awakening jumped from one ship to the other, and Ideo saw that arrogant long-nosed man appear in front of him. I see you're awake. Usopp said with an arrogant smile. You bastard. Ideo growled. As I said before, you have two choices. 1, talk to Luffy in Dressrosa, or 2, get beaten until you agree with the first option. Usopp said with a malicious grin, nothing like the boy who left Syrup Village almost 2 years ago. You think I'll agree to this just because your captain is an emperor? You're not the first emperor who's tried to convince us. Ideo said with determination. In the next moment, he was slapped on the head, causing him to fall to the ground without having time to react. He felt his world spinning, frustrated, before getting back up. His long arms hung by his sides as he looked at Usopp, frustrated and even a bit fearful. Come on, man, this won't help at all. I don't think he's going to force you into our fleet if you really don't want to join, but he still wants you to at least go and talk to him. I know you can at least do that. Usopp said, and Ideo just had a frustrated look. When his gaze fell on his fallen crewmates, all defeated, he clenched his fists before turning back to the young man. All right. He admitted, realizing he had no choice. I'll talk to your captain then. At least have a conversation like he wants. Great, we'll wait for your crew to wake up before moving on. Usopp said. In the end, instead of going to Dressrosa alone like the Junta Maria Grand Fleet, the noble ship was followed by Ideo's pirate ship, as they sailed towards a special place. So, are we heading for the second pirate group we're hunting? This Cavendish? Chopper asked, holding a wadded poster of the second target of their group, showing it to everyone. Yes, this is Cavendish, one of the supernovas from 2 years ago. He was prominent until the worst generation emerged. It seems he's quite arrogant, and as Luffy warned and made clear, he's also hostile to the members of the worst generation, which includes 2 of us on this ship. Usopp said, glancing at Reiju, since both of them were pirates considered supernovas with bounties over 100 million baileys. Alright then, let's head there. Reiju said in the end, and the ship continued sailing in that direction. In a village on an island a few dozen kilometers away, there was a man showing off while several women gazed at him with hearts in their eyes. He wore a hat and held a flower in his mouth, trying to appear gallant. Many women seemed to be enchanted by his every move. But in the midst of this, no one noticed when suddenly, his face changed. He began to smile strangely, as if he were about to act with a much more deadly personality than his current one. Chapter 405, Beautiful Pirates. In Dorina Kingdom, in a coastal city far from the capital, where there were at least 50,000 inhabitants, an event caught attention as a blond man stood out to everyone, displaying himself in an unusual way for all there. Cavendish easily drew attention from people, especially the women, as he enjoyed showing off. Cavendish. The women screamed like his very own fan club. Hello, my ladies, what luck that I'm here for you on this beautiful day. I hope you're all doing great. He said, winking. Ah! The women exclaimed, hearts in their eyes as they gazed at him with excited expressions. I'm glad you're here because I can share a bit of my great pirate adventures. He exclaimed, striking a pose. Please, tell us about your adventures. The crowd kept shouting while, a little distance away, a group of people watched with slightly bored expressions. That guy's a pirate who showed up a few years ago. Looks like he's quite the show-off. One man murmured to another. Who cares? As long as he doesn't cause trouble for our village, I don't mind him. After all, there are pirates we should worry about more right now. His friend said in a calm tone. Ah yes. Today's paper reported a sighting of Monkey D. Luffy near the Red Line. He invaded the Golden City, Gran Tesoro, and caused some trouble there. He said, showing today's newspaper. At the start of the Grand Line. As long as he doesn't show up here. It's fine. I wouldn't want to run into a man like him in this kingdom. The other murmured. Yes. He's probably heading to Dressrosa. There's no reason for him to come here, right? Another from the group expressed concern. At that moment, one of them noticed the crowd cheering for the recently arrived pirate, and saw Cavendish staring directly at them, his eyes gleaming crimson. Why is he looking at us like that? The people asked, slightly startled. Before anyone could speak again, suddenly, Cavendish vanished from his podium in the square and reappeared in front of the men, leaving them stunned and unable to react. What did you say? Cavendish exclaimed with a furious look, grabbing the man with the newspaper as everyone there grimaced at him. What are you doing? Despite the previous boredom, the man couldn't help but feel fear before this pirate with a bounty of 280 million Baileys. Tell me. You were afraid that Monkey D. Luffy might appear here, but you weren't afraid of me? Cavendish was upset. He could have been in the middle of his adoring crowd, but his ears quickly picked up someone saying he wasn't as important. As someone as narcissistic as him, he could never accept something like that. Well. After all, he's a four emperors. The man admitted, stating the obvious. I don't give a damn if he's a four emperors. I am Cavendish, do you hear me? Cavendish. He continued exclaiming, causing the man's grimace to deepen. Why yes. The man shouted as Cavendish already had his sword at his neck, losing all his former aura of glory while the crowd, mainly consisting of women, looked at him in slight confusion. Then say it. Who's better, me or Monkey D. Luffy? He asked in a dangerous tone. It's you. Please, leave me alone. The man exclaimed, and Cavendish's aura shifted immediately as he smiled with stars appearing around him. That's great to hear, so you're my fan. You may go. Cavendish said in an excited tone as the man collapsed to the ground, staring at him in fear before running away, while no one else wanted to be around that slightly lunatic man anymore. Ha ha ha. Well, my ladies, where were we? Let's get back to me telling a story about my great adventures. Excuse me. Are you Cavendish? A soft voice appeared next to Cavendish with light footsteps, catching his attention. A fan? Cavendish said with a smile, turning his head, but in the next moment, he froze. After all, there was a reindeer in front of him, one he knew very well. Memories of the days when he was in his glory flashed before him, days that suddenly crumbled with the rise of the worst generation. His fans quickly began to forget him, paying attention to everything the new supernovas did in every piece of news. But the worst of all, by far, were the Straw Hats, who had captured the world's attention, something Cavendish had always dreamed of. No. I came looking for you. Chopper said in a happy tone while holding a cotton candy he had bought before arriving at the square. How cute. The crowd quickly turned their attention to Chopper, their expressions shifting from Cavendish to Chopper as he became the center of their admiration. Cavendish was speechless, watching his crowd switch sides, as all the women ran to Chopper at that moment. Chopper was also surprised as he was lifted up by the group of women, leaving Cavendish behind, who could only watch with stunned eyes as he was replaced. Hey, what are you doing? Chopper exclaimed, trying to protect his cotton candy so it wouldn't get knocked down as the women grabbed him. You're so cute, what's your name? They asked. Can I take you home? I'd love to sleep with a teddy bear like you. The women continued, pinching Chopper's cheeks and fur while he struggled to free himself from the tight grips. "Who are you calling cute, you idiots?" Chopper exclaimed, frowning at them all, though he seemed rather pleased with the compliments. Beside them, suddenly, Cavendish knelt down, being ignored by the entire crowd. "Why am I being ignored? All my fans replaced me with a reindeer who just arrived. Why can't anyone see the splendor and magnificence that is me?" he muttered in a tearful tone. Meanwhile, Usopp also appeared at that moment. "Hey, Chopper, what are you doing?" he exclaimed, approaching. "Hey, that's a Straw Hat. It's the sniper who fought in the war." There was a murmur as soon as they saw Usopp approaching. "He is incredibly powerful. I heard he destroyed part of Manafort while transforming into a huge dragon." The women clamored as they saw Usopp approaching. Usopp was surprised as the city's women grabbed him. "Tell me some of your adventures, mighty pirate?" they quickly asked. He was a little lost. Cavendish looked at Usopp with even more rage, losing more fans while he was being ignored. Chopper seemed thrilled and started narrating some of his tall tales under the admiring gaze of the other women. "Damn Straw Hat pirates!" Usopp was interrupted as he looked surprised, being confronted by the man he and Chopper were looking for. Cavendish had drawn his sword and was now pointing it at Usopp. Usopp looked stunned as he was still being held by both arms by the women of the city, recounting some of his adventures. "I challenge you, pirate!" Cavendish exclaimed. "My honor is at stake. Face me!" he shouted, raising his sword toward the Straw Hat's sniper. "Well. All right then, I accept your challenge," Usopp said, still a bit wary, preparing to fight him if he was being challenged like that, while moving away from the women. "Very well, then prepare yourself. You will feel the power of this star," Cavendish shouted. In the next moment, he jumped to attack Usopp, but Usopp simply disappeared, reappearing behind him. Before Cavendish could react, his body began to lose balance, and he fell to the ground. The entire area went silent. After all, everyone expected a grand fight, not something so one-sided. To everyone, it seemed Usopp had defeated him with ease. "So this is the power of the Straw Hats," the people murmured. But Usopp raised an eyebrow at the fallen man. He hadn't used much power, yet Cavendish was lying on the ground, snoring. This narcissistic pirate had fallen asleep in the middle of the fight and had dodged Usopp's attack effortlessly. "Wait a minute, did he fall asleep?" the people asked, now noticing the huge bubble growing from his nose. Even Chopper approached. "I'm a doctor, I should check if he's okay. Let's see if something's wrong." He started to move closer while still munching on his cotton candy, no longer bothered by the women. But in the next moment, Cavendish's expression began to change. His face twisted into something rather sinister. "Hey, Chopper, be careful." Usopp quickly sensed the change and yelled at his crewmate. Chopper looked surprised as he saw Cavendish suddenly get up with that twisted face and attack with his sword. With quick reflexes, Chopper jumped back, dodging the strike. His cotton candy was sliced in half, leaving Chopper in shock. "My cotton candy," he murmured as the man, or whatever he was now, disappeared again, abandoning his attack on Chopper and searching for another victim. Chopper began to cry after that. Cavendish, now in an unknown transformation, started sprinting around, cutting down anything in his path. "Hey, what's going on?" Usopp exclaimed as Cavendish moved at high speed across the square. Usopp saw him running out of the square and quickly sprouted wings on his back, trying to stop the lunatic in a state he no longer recognized, cutting down anyone he saw. Meanwhile, Reiju and Yuta, who were buying some fish and other seafood, one of them cooking while the other had a craving for something special, heard the commotion and the screams coming from the middle of the city. "What's happening now?" Yuta murmured, while Reiju, smoking a cigarette, looked at the situation. Suddenly, something charged through the streets, with people running in the opposite direction. That thing appeared at the beginning of their street, cutting through houses and people rapidly. Until the creature, with a macabre smile, saw Reiju and Yuta charged at them at full speed. Reiju saw it and didn't like at all the sight of that thing lunging at her, but Cavendish, in his transformed state, barely had time to react when her kick hit him with such speed that he was sent flying, crashing through an entire building from the impact of her strike. "Who was this maniac?" Reiju murmured, taking the cigarette out of her mouth to blow the smoke before taking another drag, while Yuta approached her side. "That guy. He's cutting down everyone," Yuta said, looking at the streets. At that moment, Usopp appeared, flying with his wings. "Did you get him?" he asked as he approached Reiju. "I buried him in that building," Reiju commented. Suddenly, an explosion occurred there, and Cavendish came sprinting out, rushing to attack more people on the other side. "That bastard. We have to stop him," Usopp muttered. He flapped his wings, flying toward Cavendish again. He had to be careful not to destroy more of the city with one of his attacks and knew he had to act differently. Back in the square, Cavendish continued his rampage, cutting down more people. Chopper was there, crying with his cotton candy on the ground. After losing sight of it, Chopper focused on the lunatic running around, slashing at everything that moved in front of him, regardless of the people's screams. Chopper, enraged, replaced his tears with a furious glare. Cavendish saw him and charged at him as well. As he advanced toward the Straw Hat member, Chopper's body began to grow. Even without his rumble ball, he had learned to reach all the stages of his transformation. A moment later, he was so large that he stood out across the city, towering over every building. It happened so fast that Cavendish couldn't react. He only saw the shadow blocking out the entire sky in front of him. Before he could understand what was happening, a massive hand slammed him into the ground, shaking the entire square and destroying part of it. Usopp arrived at that moment. "Well, looks like you got him." He looked at Chopper's giant hand, leaving a crater in the square. The enormous Chopper nodded as he began to shrink, returning to his normal size. Still with a few tears in his eyes, he murmured, "Yes." Thinking about his lost cotton candy. "Now we need to clean up this mess." "Don't worry, we'll get you another cotton candy," Usopp said, trying to comfort him. In the end, there were many injured and defeated people scattered across the city. At that moment, the two women arrived, with Yuta approaching, holding a cotton candy. "Here," she said, as she had bought one for herself, but seeing Chopper in that state, she decided to give it to him. Chopper nodded excitedly. "Thank you." His gaze finally shifted to his surroundings, seeing the fallen bodies. "Someone call a doctor," he exclaimed desperately. "I'll take care of that," Raja said, quickly starting to release her regenerative flames through the streets where Cavendish had wreaked havoc. "Well, there's nothing left for us to do here. Let's just capture him and lock him up," Usopp murmured. Although Cavendish had a crew, there was no sign of them anywhere, so they wouldn't waste time. They quickly returned to the ship, where their new companions were waiting to head to Dressrosa. Chapter 406, Korigana Island. The ship, with a giant snail guiding it, advanced through other waters of the New World as they approached a mysterious island, following the eternal pose that Luffy had given them. Finally, the island was near, and Korigana Island was right in front of everyone on the ship. The first thing noticed about this place was the thick, almost ghostly mist covering the entire island before they could get a better look at anything else on it. "Well, we've finally arrived," Zoro commented on the ship while adjusting his sword. "Not thanks to you, is it?" Kuina teased from the side, as Zoro had wanted to take a different route than the one Luffy had suggested, claiming his intuition sensed a shortcut. Obviously, if it had been up to Zoro to navigate, they'd be heading back to the East Blue by now. Thanks to the giant snail, which had followed Luffy's eternal pose on its own, they had finally reached the destination. "That's not true," Zoro denied with a grimace. "Yo-oh-oh." Brook appeared at that moment, patting Zoro on the shoulder. "Don't worry, Zoro-san, the important thing is that we've arrived," he said. "Hey. So, you're agreeing with her?" Zoro exclaimed, making another face at Brook. "Wolf, wolf." Chaochu began approaching the edge, barking as the group reached the location. "Anyway, so this is the place where the world's greatest swordsman lives?" Kuina said, still surprised after receiving that information from Luffy. "Seems like it. I'm looking forward to seeing him so we can finally decide who's the strongest in the world. I've got all my swords sharpened for this," Zoro commented, tightening his grip on his sword. "You're that excited. But why don't I sense any powerful presence coming from this island?" Kuina remarked. "Yeah, Mihawk isn't on the island," Zoro admitted, having already scouted with his haki long before their ship approached it. "Then why were you so happy and acting like he was here?" Kuina exclaimed, frowning. And so they headed for the island, with the snail finally stopping at an old and abandoned port on the island. Their feet touched the ground as everyone disembarked. They entered a ruined gate town. "This place is really strange," Kuina commented. "Do you think there are ghosts here?" Brook couldn't help but express his fear. "Wolf." Chaochu mocked him with the irony of him being a walking skeleton. "Anyway, let's explore. Luffy said we might find good challenges here, with those monkeys," Zoro mentioned, and they began exploring the island shortly after. "So, this is where we're supposed to find the creatures the captain asked for?" Brook murmured, looking around. "Yes. Chaochu already picked up their scent," Kuina said as Chaochu led the way. Luffy had asked them to capture a good number of human drills, which are highly intelligent gorillas that learn quickly. He had sent this team here specifically to collect some of these creatures, as he wanted to work with his scientists to develop them further. These were the only creatures Luffy didn't have on the Sky Island, and ones he certainly coveted to use in his training fields, or perhaps even create his personal army, since they were even more special than dinosaurs. He had also made sure to send Zoro and Kuina as his best swordsman, despite thinking it was still too early for Zoro to receive the title of the world's greatest swordsman. They could certainly hold off Mihawk to capture the creatures and leave the island with their current strength. Wolf, wolf! Chouchou barked, drawing everyone's attention as he looked toward a huge castle ahead, appearing through the mist. It was Mihawk's house, the greatest swordsman in the world. It's a shame he's not here, Zoro said with some disappointment. Let's put that aside and follow Chouchou, Kuina said as the group's dog headed toward a forest in another direction, and they followed. It didn't take long for them to spot some small primates watching them from the forest at a distance. The creatures began running deeper into the forest after they had seen enough of the group. Everyone noticed it, but no one cared as they patiently waited at the entrance of the forest, already knowing what would happen. A commotion started inside, and heavy footsteps began approaching them, with a group of gorillas of various sizes marching towards them in a manner that resembled humans walking while carrying things, leaving some surprised. The captain was really right. They even use firearms. I wonder how he knows such precise and detailed things. Brook commented, looking at the monkeys holding pistols and rifles, wearing armor as they advanced toward the group. Well, these ones aren't very important, but those with swords, especially that one coming over here, are interesting. Zoro added, now sensing a strong presence coming from behind those gorillas. A huge shadow emerged from the forest mist, as the other monkeys cleared the way for this one, suggesting it was the most powerful among them. A 10-meter-tall gorilla appeared with a massive sword on its back, which seemed to be a copy of Mihawk's black blade, Yoru. It advanced calmly towards the group as the ground cracked with its steps. So big, Yo-oh-oh, Brook commented, laughing. Zoro grinned at that moment, stepping forward. Who's going to face him? Let me start, he said as he walked, but soon a sword in a white sheath blocked his path. No. You already fought Mihawk at Maniford. Now let me see how his copy fights, Kuina said, ending with a firm tone. Although Zoro wanted to protest, he eventually relented. He had already fought Mihawk, and it wouldn't be fair not to let his childhood friend have the opportunity to face the power of the current strongest swordsman in the world, especially since Zoro could feel how this giant gorilla resembled the powerful swordsman. In the next moment, Kuina approached the group as she drew her sword from its sheath, Hiran Maru, which emitted a frosty glow. Let's begin, then, Kuina said, moving alone against all the monkeys. She advanced swiftly the next moment as all the monkeys, offended by having only one of the four challengers approach, charged at her to kill her quickly. The other three just watched as Kuina rushed towards the group, and a battle erupted, with explosions dominating the scene as they fought each other. Time passed, with the battle growing in intensity, but Kuina didn't use her Shiva transformation. Instead, she relied solely on her speed, strength, techniques, and her own swordsmanship. It was only after an hour that things finally calmed down. The entire forest was frozen, with massive ice pillars rising into the sky, filled with the bodies of gorillas scattered throughout the area. Most of them were frozen inside blocks of ice, unable to move. The three companions merely watched as their comrade fought. Looks like it's over, Zoro murmured. Yes. Kuina-san is very strong. Yo-oh-oh. Brook laughed. Kuina stood in the middle of all the chaos, and the sound of her sword being sheathed was heard as she looked at all the opponents she had defeated, scattered around the area. The main gorilla, with its massive body, lay on the ground in front of her, heavily wounded, while its giant sword lay a short distance away after its defeat. She hadn't managed to freeze it because it was too strong, so she had to cut it down until it was defeated. She simply sighed and returned to her companions. Well, let's start bringing them to the ship, she said. All right. Zoro agreed as Brook ran to the ship. Chouchou barked, transforming into a Cerberus, while Brook returned at that moment with giant chains. He quickly dashed with his bony legs to chain up the gorillas in the forest. Zoro grabbed the enormous chain Brook had brought, and with Chouchou, began dragging all the defeated gorillas that had been tied to the main chain, moving them back toward the shore, creating a trail with the bodies of the gorillas as they approached the ship. Thus, they began loading all the animals onto the ship when they arrived back in that abandoned town. The snail ship was large enough to accommodate even the entire Germa Kingdom before Luffy claimed it for himself, so it wasn't difficult to lock all those animals aboard. They chained them up on the boat and started preparing to depart, having nothing else to do on the island. Well, that was pretty easy. Brook couldn't help but comment as the ship began to move away from the island. It certainly was good training, Kuina said, satisfied. She hadn't even been injured, but she enjoyed testing her skills against those creatures. I hope Luffy makes them stronger so they're more challenging, Zoro remarked, looking at the massive gorilla that was a copy of Mihawk. He had also wanted to fight the creatures, knowing he'd have more opportunities, with Luffy intending to modify them to be even more powerful. Well, Luffy said they learn our abilities. They've probably already picked up on Kuina's attacks, so they'll naturally be stronger. Brook added. If the captain and the scientists modify them like the other beasts, they'd be perfect for training. Even more so once they learn Haki. Kuina added. And so, the ship began to leave the island, heading back to Dressrosa. Several days passed, and a small boat with sails appeared near the island, approaching. A man, carrying a massive sword on his back, was finally returning home to rest for a while before setting off in search of new challenges on the sea. However, as soon as he set foot on the island, he knew someone had been there. Seeing the large tracks in the earth, the result of the gorilla's bodies being dragged to the shore, he decided to investigate rather than heading straight to his castle. Surprised, he found his forest, where the resident monkeys that lived on the island with him, frozen in several places, even though the ice had clearly been created days ago. My intuition wasn't wrong. Something happened on this island, he murmured, since a few days ago, his attention had been drawn to this direction while he was sailing the sea. So, he came here immediately. Approaching the ice, he touched it, his eyes gleaming. He knew exactly whose ice it was, having seen it at Maniford. They were here. Could it have been to challenge me? He reflected for a moment, looking at the frozen forest. They've certainly grown stronger. The girl. She seems even more skilled than when she fought with the Straw Hat a year ago when she transformed into Shiva, but she's certainly a swordsman, and appears very talented. The presence of Roronoa Zoro was also here. He analyzed. Well, it seems that, by fate, we didn't meet. But I eagerly await our encounter, Roronoa Zoro. Mihawk murmured, leaving the frozen forest behind, not particularly bothered, even though many of the monkeys were missing. He returned to his castle, which was untouched, where he would drink some wine and rest in the coming days. Chapter 407, Zoan. In an area of the sea in the middle of the New World, the ocean became chaotic as explosions erupted in front of a massive shadow that stretched into the sky for those below, unable to see its end. This shadow kept moving. Its mere act of walking on the sea agitated the waters, creating enormous waves, and anyone who caught sight of this colossus in the open sea would turn back immediately, not wanting to face this creature. The massive shadow slowly revealed its true form, a colossal walking island. However, this island was unlike any other found on the seas. The creature that carried this vastness was a giant elephant, continuing its walk across the sea, with each step echoing like thunder over the ocean. Its name was Zunsha, an ancient creature over 1,000 years old, condemned to a punishment that no one fully understood since the Void Century. Some people in this world knew that it was once a companion of Joy Boy, and among them, it was suspected that this punishment of wandering the seas had been imposed by Joy Boy himself or perhaps his companions from that time. Its enormous size for walking on the sea was nothing ordinary, after all, standing over 35 kilometers from its feet to the small shell on its back. What might seem like a small carapace to it was so large it could be considered an island, due to the civilization that lived there. Despite facing extreme climatic conditions so high above the clouds, something similar to Skypiea, the people living above were different from any race in the world. This place was home to a people known as the Minks, a race of fierce warriors with animal-like traits, living in harmony with the nature they had a strong connection with due to their beastly forms. Everything seemed normal this day, as its inhabitants were just going about their usual routines, until a short while ago, like any other day. But that changed when their two main leaders met during the changing of the guard and began fighting each other once again, as they used to do every day. The leader who ruled during the day, Inuyarashi, Dog, officially known as the Duke of Day, and the other who ruled during the night, Nekomamushi, Cat, officially known as the Duke of Night. Both strove for the best path for their people, always wanting to ensure that the Minks could grow happy and prosperous until the day they were called to fight in Wano once again. However, due to past events related to Odin, to whom they were loyal and cooperated together until his death, the breaking of that cooperation had turned them into rivals. Every time they faced each other, it seemed they always wanted to surpass one another, but they always ended in a draw. They were much stronger than an ordinary person, reaching the level of a sub-commander or even a 4 Emperor commander. They would unite their forces with their beast form under the full moon and wouldn't hesitate to join forces to protect if necessary. At this moment, a battlefield had been created as the two fought one another, with explosions and blows echoing through the field. One was a dog, the other a cat, fighting fiercely without unleashing their race's most powerful strength, as they never fought under the full moon in their encounters. Once again, the entire population watched with concern, although they were used to this, as it happened nearly every day. As they exchanged blows on the battlefield, hitting each other, their injuries began to grow. Today, I will defeat you. Inuarashi shouted, attempting to strike the other. You're not strong enough. Now, lose like a cat, you mangy dog. Nekomamushi responded, counterattacking. And so, their fists collided once more. As the battle raged on, something unexpected happened this morning, drawing everyone's attention. While exchanging blows, both noticed that the sun had been covered by something that looked like a cloud. However, upon closer inspection of the shadow, they realized it was clearly not a cloud. They looked up. Hey, is that a ship? The minx exclaimed, astonished, as they saw the shape of a ship with sails, coming toward their home. Damn, what is that? Nekomamushi and Inuarashi exclaimed at the same time, wondering if that uninvited ship was an enemy, as they stopped fighting and took a step back, carefully watching the ship approaching without warning. Nekomamushi, it's already morning. You can sleep, I'll handle this. Inuarashi said, looking at his rival. You think I'm going to let you govern our domain while a powerful enemy might be coming here? Don't be foolish. Nekomamushi responded angrily. I swear, if you get in my way, I'll beat you so hard that I'll start rulings by myself. Don't be a fool. Inuarashi said, equally furious. Please, rulers, calm down. Let's first see who this individual is. Some of the minks tried to convince them to calm down. At this moment, the ship began to approach, revealing itself. That ship looks like me. Nekomamushi said, surprised as he saw a feline figure on the bow. It was none other than the Sunny Go, with Bippo, Alvida, Jinbai, and Frankie aboard. That's a lion, nothing to do with you, you stupid cat. Inuarashi mocked. What did you say, you mangy dog? Nekomamushi retorted. Hey, that flag. The minks were surprised, they received newspapers here and knew what that Jolly Roger represented, as the Sunny Go bore the Straw Hat Pirates symbol. So, this is very high, good thing we have Bippo. Frankie said in amazement, looking at the place, while proudly showing off his ship, which he had built in Water 7, as he always did whenever he got the chance. Well, it looks like they're already waiting for us. Alvida murmured, noticing the crowd of humanoid animals gathering as they approached. Jinbai was at the helm, but the one really steering the ship was Bippo, using the power of his devil fruit to get closer and closer to the mink warriors. So, I'm back here. After so many years. Bippo muttered. He knew he was one of them, not at all foolish, but somehow, he had been taken from this island when he was very young, with only hazy memories of his childhood here. He had left for certain reasons and ended up in the North Blue, where he met Lami when he was still a child. The girl had adopted him as her companion since then, and he grew up with her, even though he was just a child. Lami had practically been a mother to him. Now, he was returning to his homeland with a mix of excitement and fear. Hey, Bippo? Are you going to do what the captain asked? After all, he asked you to represent us here. Alvida spoke to him. I don't know. I don't know if I can do this. Bippo replied, hesitating. Alvida just sighed, realizing she would have to give him some encouragement as she approached the polar bear mink. Well, anyway, let's go. She said, pushing him right off the ship just 30 meters away from us. Ah. Bippo was first surprised but quickly calmed down in the air, kicking the air with moonwalk and starting to stabilize, landing on the ground in front of all the residents who had been waiting for a fight. After all, as a mink, he should represent the crew. After landing smoothly on the ground, the entire tribe was looking at him with some surprise, while 3 others landed beside him, seemingly from 3 different races. Despite Alvida being a human woman, Frankie was far too large and unreal for a human, and Jinbai was clearly a fish man. Bippo, although feeling some fear, quickly controlled the ship, landing carefully beside them. Hey, what are you doing here? Nekomamushi and Inuarashi asked at the same time in a dangerous tone. That's Bippo I saw in the newspaper. But he's also a mink. The minks quickly realized that Bippo was one of them. How strange. Does anyone remember him? The curious and cautious eyes soon began questioning Bippo. After all, they didn't know him, even though Bippo had been born here. As the gossip continued, the leaders didn't seem too fond of hearing about this crew from the newspaper, even though they had a common enemy, Kaido. Meanwhile, the Straw Hats present all looked at Bippo, as Luffy had asked him to represent the crew here. Hey, tell me exactly what your intentions are. Nekomamushi and Inuarashi demanded, seeing the silence from the other side. Ugh, no way. Put the wig on him. Alvida sighed, as Frankie, with his huge body, which made the minks question if he was even human, pulled something from his belt and held it up. It was a wig, and in the next moment, he placed it on Bippo's head. Bippo hesitated for a moment, not even feeling the wig being put on, but in the next instant, his eyes lit up, making all the minks sense a shift in the atmosphere around the polar bear, one of their own kind. It's been a long time since I've been here. This place is quite nostalgic. How are you, Mink tribe? Let me introduce myself. I am Bippo, a mink like you before anything else, and a member of the Straw Hat crew, led by Monkey D. Luffy. We're here for a purpose. Bippo began, as everyone stared, stunned by the sudden change, while he seemed to stand confidently against his entire race, without any fear. We want to make our ally, and of course, also strengthen our naval power within our fleet. That's why I'm here, to challenge all of you. Bippo said, stomping firmly on the ground as he stepped away from the rest of the crew, walking toward the entire Mink tribe. If I defeat all of you, I want you to join my captain's fleet. If we lose, we'll leave and give you a gift, a way to enter your beast form without needing the full moon. If you join our crew, you'll have that too, of course. Bippo added. With that, everyone stared in astonishment at Bippo's words, even the two leaders looked suspicious. It seemed that Bippo, now radiating an air of confidence, was approaching the crowd watching him as he prepared to face his entire race. Of course, his words made everyone look at him with distrust, but in the next moment, shock spread through the crowd. Bippo began to grow, proving the truth of his words. His body transformed into its beast form as his clothes ripped, without needing the moon or the rumble balls Chopper had created to enter Sulong mode. He transformed into a massive bear over 20 meters tall in just a second, stomping on the ground and making the entire place tremble. All the minks were stunned by what they were seeing. I'm here for a simple challenge. If you beat me, I will give you the way to enter this mode. If I win, all of Z's territory will become part of the Straw Hat crew, and all the minks will join our crew. But don't worry, the captain is fair, and you won't regret it. He said, issuing the challenge, while all the minks stared, shocked by Bippo's form. His body was in the Sulong form, something that usually only happened at night under the full moon, but now he had managed to activate this transformation in the middle of the day. They didn't know how he had done it, as his body began to electrify. Bippo was one of the most powerful members of the crew at this moment, even though he still retained his hesitant personality and lack of confidence. However, as soon as he wore the wig, he somehow overcame any hesitation, taking on a character ever since the days of Whiskey Peak. Bippo possessed the 6 powers in their most advanced forms, being the most skilled in this area. He had medium-level armament hockey and observation hockey, as well as the float fruit model, flying human devil fruit, a legendary power comparable to the tremor power of the late Whitebeard. And then there was his beast form, which multiplied his strength several times over. He was a true powerhouse, and now he was challenging the entire mink race to prove his superior power, even against his own kind. Chapter 408, Zo 2. The giant bear with a wig stood in front of thousands of animals after his challenge was declared to all, while his body continued to emit electricity. Hey, is this guy serious? The minks murmured, looking at Bippo with various expressions. There was disbelief, anger, curiosity, caution, and fear among the entire race, watching that polar bear enter his Sulong form with sheer willpower, something they wouldn't have believed if someone had told them. Yet, there, before their eyes, it was happening exactly as they saw it. Hey, don't underestimate me, you fool. Inuarashi, the master of the day, exclaimed, dissatisfied with the type of challenge that had been made by this mink. After all, it was inadmissible for someone to want to challenge his entire race as if underestimating them like no one had ever done in their life. Bippo didn't even care, while using his Sulong form. Come all at once, that way it'll be fairer. He spoke arrogantly. How can he do this? Some minks murmured still in disbelief. He wants to challenge all of us? Since when has there been such a powerful mink? He's just trying to show off. He can't be that strong, I'm sure the leaders will fight him and defeat him. Others murmured. At that moment, Nekomamushi, the master of the night, stepped forward. Leave it to me, I will face him and defeat him. He spoke arrogantly. Hey, you may rule the night, but it's morning now. Leave him to me, you idiot. Inuarashi spoke with arrogance and anger. Don't be foolish, let me defeat him. After that, I'll go to sleep while you handle the rest. Nekomamushi said with an arrogant tone, believing he could easily deal with Bippo even in his Sulong form. As he approached Bippo. Come then, polar bear, I challenge you. He approached Bippo with a challenging tone. But, in the next moment, as he stopped in front of Bippo waiting for him to attack, a giant paw was in front of him, mixed with electricity and armament hockey. Nekomamushi barely had time to react, crossing his arms to defend himself, but his body was shot backward in the next instant, being thrown back into the crowd. Everyone watched in shock, trying to get away before the Master of the Night crashed into one of the structures at the entrance of the city, near the crowd. The explosion reverberated through the area, while a silence took over, and everyone turned to look at Bippo, who had thrown one of the strongest of the tribe so easily. Even the master of the day was left with his mouth open in shock. This guy. Is he serious and wanted to fight all of us? Inuyarashi murmured, realizing that it might be unfair to have the entire race fight against just one, but now understanding that perhaps he could defeat them. Prepare for battle, everyone. He exclaimed, as all the minks prepared to fight as best they could in the next moment. That's good. I like the look in your eyes. Bippo, wanting to prove his strength, saw all the minks starting to prepare to face him there. Then the Straw Hat Bear charged violently, taking the initiative. Come on, everyone. He shouted, advancing with such determination that everyone took a step back, clearing space, while only Inuyarashi remained to try to stop the beast. In the next moment, both collided with each other as Inuyarashi, much smaller in size, tried to stop Bippo from advancing, trying to push him back. Both fought in a contest of strength, each trying to overpower the other. But quickly, the master of the day realized he was being dragged back, and under everyone's gaze, he was sent flying, crashing into another building at high speed. Did both rulers get thrown like that? The minks looked on with a gaze of fear. Don't let him subdue us. Pedro, a lion mink, exclaimed as he drew his sword and charged at Bippo, and everyone quickly followed suit, trying to stop him. Yes, we can't let Pedro be left behind. We must follow him and defeat him too. The other minks, encouraged by Pedro's courage, quickly charged as well, showing their fists, claws, and weapons they carried. Quickly, numerous minks joined Pedro, charging into battle as the air above Bippo filled with them, ready to face this Yulong mink. Bippo prepared himself as all the strongest minks, just below the rulers, advanced toward him, small in comparison to his size as well. Very well. Bippo calmly looked at them, waiting for them to make their moves. They launched several attacks at him, as he put one hand in front, and numerous explosions began. His hand disappeared, and all the attacks were stopped with a hand covered in hockey. Even Pedro couldn't surpass his defense, his sword stuck in Bippo's arm. Bippo then made his move, quickly swinging his arm, striking them, grabbing some and throwing them back as he captured the first wave of enemies. Some managed to escape as their comrades fell to the ground around them. Let's go. They were determined, trying to attack him again. But even when they got past his defense, his Yulong form provided too much resistance, and he easily endured the blows as if receiving some kind of massage. Can we not defeat this mink? That was the thought of everyone. Prepare yourselves. Pedro exclaimed as he saw Bippo preparing a move. However, the Straw Hat Bear simply vanished from the spot, reappearing near the others who barely had time to react before they were struck down in the next moment. Bippo stood atop more than 100 fallen minks, defeated on the ground. Even Pedro and many others were among them. Those who were distant, watching from afar, retreated when they saw Bippo standing over their most powerful warriors, fear in their eyes. Should we face him? They asked themselves with a bit of discouragement. Bippo stood still, seeing only the weak, not moving to fight against those who had no spirit before him. Boom. Boom. At that moment, 2 explosions occurred at the entrance of the city, as Inuyarashi and Nekomamushi emerged from the destroyed buildings, advancing with a determined look toward Bippo, surrounded by Pedro and the others fallen at his feet. No, don't underestimate him. Nekomamushi said, determined, as they advanced calmly. Bippo stood still, watching them with a satisfied look. Come on. Bippo said with a firm gaze, and in the next moment, the two advanced to face him. Boom. Both sides charged at each other as an explosion of armament hockey swept through the area. The other 3 members of the Straw Hat crew could only watch them fighting from a distance, as none of them would get involved in this fight. Well, it looks like we'll have to wait. Alvida murmured, looking off into the distance and seeing the battle unfold. Certainly, the minks are a warrior race. I've never seen Bippo enter this state on his own, so I'm impressed, as I've rarely seen anyone enter this state in my lifetime. The captain will surely have great power if he can get the entire race into Yulong form like this. Jinbai commented. They're super strong. Frankie said. But they still lack a bit of metal in their bodies. He analyzed. Not everyone is a cyborg like you. Alvida teased, while Frankie just smiled, unoffended. Boom. 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 Then the battle in front of them began, with explosions erupting all over the place as they advanced away from where the fallen minks and the city were, the blasts leading them into the forest. Inuyarashi and Nekomamushi were determined not to fall behind this mink. As they ran around him, using instant transmission, the giant Bippo simply appeared near them, striking them. Inuyarashi and Nekomamushi crashed into the ground, burying it with the force of the destruction from their bodies. Can we not do anything against him? Inuyarashi murmured, unable to believe the humiliation he was enduring in this fight. Come on. Inuyarashi. We can do better than this. Nekomamushi crawled out of another hole, his face a little wounded. Yes. We won't end this so easily. Inuyarashi agreed as he too regained his resolve. In the next moment, they charged toward Bippo, who was waiting for them, and a new fight began. Well. They are determined. Jinbai murmured, hearing the explosions in the forest in the distance. Damn. A voice came from afar, as Pedro started to get up, feeling so weak. We did nothing. He said. Are you Pedro? A voice came from beside him, while Bippo fought with Inuyarashi and Nekomamushi in the forest, the explosions continuing, as Alvida approached him. Yes. What do you want, human? Pedro, still weak, looked at her with suspicion. You see. My husband is interested in you. He is even considering putting you on the main crew, which is surprising. But I still don't see great strength in you. But who knows, Luffy doesn't usually make mistakes. She spoke. Main crew? Pedro looked at her, puzzled. Meanwhile, Jinbai, still watching the fight as the forest was being destroyed, sensed something with his haki and, upon looking back, noticed something was wrong. Something wrong? Frankie asked him from the side. Yes, there's a presence climbing up to this place, it's weak. Jinbai murmured, and both stared in that direction. A few meters away, indeed, someone was climbing up Zunch's skin. The man had been climbing for days without stopping, finally nearing the land of the minks, his goal ever since he had to leave Wano. This samurai had an important mission, to deliver a message and summon the rulers, Inuyarashi and Nekomamushi, to fight in Wano. Now, a battle would soon begin with 4 Emperor's pirate groups, and it could be the chance to take down Kaido, finally freeing Wano and opening its borders. The Red Scabbards would come in a year, along with their new ruler, Odin's eldest son. This samurai had nearly died trying to get past Kaido's troops when leaving Wano, as there were far more soldiers than usual, with the entire Beast Pirates army concentrating elsewhere. He managed to escape the country, guided by a Viver card his master had given him. Even when he saw the giant beast carrying the island on its back, he was determined to fulfill his mission and help free his country. And so, he climbed, enduring hunger and thirst, drinking only rainwater, even suffering through massive storms that tried to knock him down the entire time. But the man was resolute. He continued until the last few meters, finally reaching the edge of the minx land. His last efforts were rewarded as he managed to pull his body up. After taking a moment to breathe, happy to have finally made it, he lifted his gaze. As he did, he saw 2 figures. They weren't humans. One was a fishman, and the other, a cyborg with massive shoulders and arms. He looked at them suspiciously, and then, when he looked at the ship, his eyes widened in surprise. The Straw Hats. He murmured, seeing the flag of the Sunny go, before turning his attention to Zunsha, where there were hundreds of minks. Even Inuyarashi and Nekomamushi appeared after Bippo threw them out of the forest, having given them a beating. The man from Wano was shocked to see the entire mink race subdued, while others watched from a distance but didn't get too involved. Chapter 409, Zo 3. I was completely silent, with all the warriors of the fallen race, even their leaders, while only a few minks managed to stand up. Most, however, remain motionless on the ground. Their eyes, filled with feelings and questions, were fixed on Bippo. Meanwhile, in front of them, Bippo stood still, knowing the fight wasn't over yet. Suddenly, Nekomamushi started to move and brought his paw down, pressing it against the ground as he trembled while rising, his gaze still locked on Bippo, determined. The same could be said for Inuyarashi, who struggled to his feet with as much difficulty as his companion. We won't lose like this, no matter who you are. Inuyarashi said with frustration. Yes. Nekomamushi spoke, standing in front of everyone there. As the samurai watched, stunned. He had a message to deliver, a chance to fight against Kaido and possibly join the Straw Hats. He had not imagined he would encounter some members of this crew here, with a giant white mink he didn't know, overpowering all the other minks. You want to fight? I understand that. Very well, let's continue. Bippo said with confidence. He wasn't exerting himself to defeat them. Maybe his opponents hadn't entered Sulong mode like he had, so, to not completely humiliate his future comrades, he returned to the group that came with him. Give me the rumble balls, it's time to see their true potential. Bippo said confidently, while Jinbai reached into his pocket, pulled out 2 yellow balls, and threw them to each of the leaders. They caught them as they stood up, looking at Bippo with confusion. With this, you can transform into Sulong mode too, prepared by our doctor. Bippo said, pausing before continuing. You won't win like this, so it's better if you transform. Jinbai said seriously. Around the area, everyone watched with curiosity. Each of the leaders took the small ball, looking at each other cautiously. They didn't know why, but they simply swallowed them, trusting the words, as they saw no reason for them to be lying. Minks are easy to convince when you're sincere. Nothing happened in the first few seconds, But then, under everyone's watchful eyes, thunder and lightning began to envelop their bodies as they grew, entering Sulong mode, astonishing all the minks who were watching. Is it possible? I can't believe they're really doing it. The minks were all stunned, expressing their surprise. Good. They really changed. Bippo commented, satisfied to see it actually happen. Inuyarashi and Nekomamushi entered the form they only used once a month. When they transformed into Sulong and fought each other, the destruction was not small ins. However, now they didn't need to fight each other, as they had a common enemy. It really worked. I feel stronger. Inuyarashi and Nekomamushi began inspecting their bodies, realizing their strength had multiplied, feeling intoxicated by the power. Bippo looked on, satisfied. You look strong, but will you be able to make me use my devil fruit? He said with a superior tone. Don't underestimate me, polar bear. I'm the strongest dog mink. Inuyarashi declared. You're mistaken, I'm stronger than you won't stand a chance against me now. Nekomamushi retorted, as both still maintained their rivalry, but none less focused on the enemy ahead. In the next moment, all three disappeared, and a massive explosion occurred in the middle of the area, tearing up the ground as the force of both threw even the fallen minks' bodies aside, while Armament Hockey's thunder and lightning filled the landscape. Alvida returned to her crew, also trying to protect herself. Even the samurai could only see the shockwave coming toward him, sending him flying, thinking he was about to fall from Zunsha. However, he was caught by a large hand that grabbed his clothes and brought him back. It was Frankie, extending his hand, activating a device that could shoot it forward and pull him back. It was then that the truly powerful battle began. Giant figures started moving at high speed, imperceptible to the naked eye of most watching. All the minks retreated as the fight moved back into the forest, destroying everything in its path. Occasionally, it was possible to see Bippo fighting the two in different parts, with his image disappearing the next moment, but most of the time, he was the one hitting them. No mink could keep up with a high-speed fight as all three let their instincts take over in a frenetic battle. Still, not even the most powerful minks had a clear view. After all, Bippo was still at an advantage. Besides having a high level of armament and observation hockey, his real strength lay in the 6 styles, which allowed him to quickly dominate the fight with his movements. His flexibility, using the air as a platform with moonwalk or even instant transmission, allowed him to move at high speed, with small teleportation-like bursts, kicking the ground multiple times while attacking his opponents, evading their strikes. Inuyarashi and Nekomamushi, even in their Sulong transformation, only gained resilience, feeling imposing, yet barely able to fight against this polar bear, who continued to wound them more and more, though they remained standing with their injuries increasing. The fight lasted about an hour, with more and more parts of the terrain being destroyed, even reaching a bit of the city. Everyone just watched, already on their feet, waiting for the battle to end. Even Zunsha seemed disturbed by the explosions it felt on its back, worried about the minks and wondering what was happening up there. After a larger explosion than any before, things began to calm down, with no further movement as the impact of the blast sent wind through the entire city. Finally, the space around the middle of the forest, where a large crater had formed, began to clear of dust, revealing the two minks losing their transformation and falling to their knees, exhausted and bleeding, while Bippo remained standing, watching them calmly, though he had some injuries too, but nowhere near losing. They looked at Bippo with a defeated expression. It seems you're still not used to the rumble ball, which is why you lasted only an hour. Bippo commented calmly. We can't even defeat him. He's on a whole other level. Inuyarashi said in frustration, watching the scene unfold. Did you use all your power? Nekomamushi asked, spitting blood. I think you know the answer. Bippo replied simply, without much movement. This is really embarrassing. Could you show us your true strength? They asked curiously, and Bippo nodded, seeing no problem with it. Alright, if you want to see my true strength, then watch. He said, as he raised his front paw toward a part of the sky. Inuyarashi and Nekomamushi started looking up, wondering what he was planning to do. At that moment, something began to happen in the sky. The atmosphere between the clouds seemed to distort, and the clouds started moving strangely, revealing a small glowing dot in the distance. This made both minks observe in silence, their eyes fixed on that small point, not knowing exactly what it was or what Bippo was doing. Slowly, the brightness in the sky intensified. The point of light began to grow, increasing in size with each passing second, until it became clear what everyone was seeing, causing even those unaware of what Bippo was doing to look up at the sky at that moment, noticing the light in the middle of the blue sky with small clouds. Inuyarashi and Nekomamushi widened their eyes, realizing what it really was. Is this really starting? They couldn't believe what they were seeing. The meteor could be heard at that moment as it tore through the sky with impressive speed, even from kilometers away, leaving a trail of fire and sparks in its wake. Its brightness became so intense that it outshone the sun in the sky, with the air seeming to vibrate around the celestial body, and heat reaching them as the enormous meteor passed over Zunsha, with everyone watching, hypnotized. Bippo simply looked up at the sky with an expression of pure calm, seemingly unfazed by the destruction that the massive stone coming from the atmosphere could cause. "Is this what you wanted to see?" Bippo murmured, almost as a taunt to them. The meteor continued for hundreds of kilometers away as it fell into the distance, heading toward the middle of the sea, racing toward the horizon until everyone saw it collide at the edge. A flash of light appeared at that moment with the impact, and the sound of it came shortly after, as the sea rose with flames and a large wave disturbed the waters. Even Zunsha itself seemed to tremble, its eyes quivering as it glanced at the scene. Not even the millennial beast would be unshaken by receiving a meteor like that. As the sea rose from the impact, a shockwave traveled across the ocean, crashing against Zunsha's legs, though it didn't affect the creature. The sea would remain turbulent for hours due to the impact, while Bippo turned back to those who had challenged him. "Are you satisfied with this?" he asked calmly. "You? Is that your power?" Inuyarashi and Nekomamushi were visibly shaken by it. This is truly the power he sent to Big Mom a year ago. I think he overdid it. This will cause problems for all the islands around here. Jinbai commented, somewhat shocked by this display of power. I wouldn't want to be hit by something like that. This power could wipe out entire islands. Frankie admitted honestly, wondering if this power could even be compared to the ancient weapons. Our friend here seems quite shaken, but more importantly, who is he? Alvida asked, noticing the samurai trembling beside them after being caught by Frankie. I don't know. I just didn't let him fall, but he seems to know us. Frankie responded. It's hard for anyone not to recognize us. Jinbai murmured. While all the minks were shaken by the attack, the rulers looked at the one who had caused such a natural disaster with apparent ease. We can't defeat him. Inuyarashi admitted now. Nekomamushi didn't respond, only lowering his head, knowing just like his companion that if they were to receive such an attack, they wouldn't survive. Do you plan to fight Kaido in Wano? Inuyarashi asked, despite his frustration. Yes, my captain is stronger than me, so we will destroy Kaido and the four Emperors. Their era is over, and we will only finish it. Bippo said firmly. Both looked at each other for a moment, seemingly conversing through their eyes despite their rivalry, and then they kneeled. They didn't plan on joining the Straw Hats or fighting against Kaido. After all, Odin had said that only 1 year later would Kaido's defeat happen, but now? How could they fight against such power? We accept joining your fleet. And we will fight in Wano with you. They both said at the same time, as Bippo looked on, satisfied with their decision. Chapter 410, Zo4. It seems it's over. Jinbai murmured as he watched Bippo emerge from the forest under everyone's gaze, his transformation slowly returning to normal while he walked confidently with the two rulers, leading the way in front of his defeated challengers. They approached the place where the fight had begun, while the two leaders looked at their people with a certain caution and confusion in their eyes. Take care of all the injured, but first of all, we lost the fight. We can't defeat him. One of them spoke to the whole crowd, visibly shocked by this. We'll accept fighting alongside them in Wano. But I won't let my people submit to this four emperors until we truly know him, though he has already proven to be extremely powerful and trustworthy, as just this subordinate had the strength to defeat us. Inuyarashi added. Will we fight with the pirates? Some minks asked. We won't force anyone to do it. This polar bear said that his captain won't send any newly acquired troops to Wano to fight, but Inuyarashi and I are going anyway. After all, we have a few things to settle from 19 years ago, there. Nekomamushi said, and everyone nodded in agreement. Now, take care of all the injured. We will talk to them while you try to clean up all this destruction. Inuyarashi finished. Well, I guess you don't need this anymore. Frankie said, approaching Bippo and taking off his wig. Bippo's confident face shifted from a sharp look to someone a bit goofy, and he lost all his commanding atmosphere. His gaze dropped to the two commanders who had been staring at him the whole time, wounded, and it made him feel a bit intimidated. Amidst the scene, all the minks were helping their fallen comrades and cleaning up the destruction caused by the fight. They looked at him with curiosity, seeing the most powerful mink of their race after today. However, the confidence they had seen in him until now vanished, giving way to a Bippo with his mouth slightly open as everyone stared at him, causing him to look somewhat scared, which quickly embarrassed him. He simply bowed to everyone. I'm sorry, he murmured. In the next moment, all the minks fell to the ground, stunned by something so unexpected. What was that? Just a moment ago, you looked like a warrior who could take on everyone, and now you've turned into a coward apologizing? One of the minks exclaimed. Where is the man who could destroy Zunsha with a meteor? Both leaders questioned with shark-like grins and white eyes, not believing what had just happened. They couldn't understand how the removal of a wig had completely changed the bear before them. "I'm sorry," was Bippo's only response, while everyone grimaced. "Why are you apologizing?" everyone shouted. "Well, it seems our bear is back to normal," Alvida murmured with a smile as she took a few steps forward. "Now that everything's settled, let's start talking," Alvida said, as a samurai, still trembling from the meteor, approached, eager to speak with Inu Arashi and Nekomemoshi. Lords Inu Arashi and Nekomemoshi. The samurai approached the leaders, who were also surprised. "Are you from Wano?" they asked, raising their eyebrows. "Yes, I am. I came from there precisely to deliver a message from Lord Dex about the latest news in the newspapers. Wano will be a battlefield bigger than anything in the last 19 years, as you must know. The fight against the Straw Hats and against Big Mom and Kaido is only a matter of time while Kaido is preparing all of his troops," he said. "Yes, we know. But why did you come here, risking yourself?" Inu Arashi asked. "Lord Dex plans to join the battle against Kaido alongside the forces of this crew. Just like many in Wano, this could be an opportunity, so he is inviting you to take part," the man explained. "Well, this is a bit surprising, but coincidentally, we were already planning to do that. After all, we just lost to one of this crew's members. We'll end up accepting the proposal," they responded. "Well, I guess that's good," the samurai said, a little lost. "Well, anyway, let's continue our conversation," Alvida said, stepping ahead of Bippo. She could tell he had already done what Luffy expected, and now it was time to discuss the future of Zunsha. "Yes. Please, follow us," both leaders requested as the entire crew, along with a very embarrassed Bippo under everyone's gazes and another samurai, headed into the city to talk. Things began to calm down a bit as they were invited to a sort of celebration, quickly turning into a feast full of animals. As the leaders sat in the center with the pirates and samurai, the minks, being a very friendly people, soon engaged in lively conversations with the humans. "You're human? I've never seen a human so tough. You're almost as big as me. By the way, my name is Blackback. I fought your friend, but I lost miserably," a gorilla said, talking to Frankie, admiring his hard and massive arms. "I'm half human, but super awesome," Frankie replied. In another area, Alvida was drinking alcohol when she was approached by a woman wielding a sword and wearing a bikini. "Hey, you're a human warrior. I feel you're strong, but I've never seen a human with such smooth skin. It looks very beautiful," Wanda said as she moved closer to Alvida. "Thanks. I guess," Alvida replied, drinking but not really bothered. "My name is Wanda." The mink introduced herself. "Alvida." Alvida responded bluntly. "Tell me. That Bippo. Is he single?" Wanda asked, curious and interested in someone so strong from her own race. "Yes. Hey Bippo, it's time to get married. There's Wanda here," Alvida shouted, causing Wanda to blush in embarrassment. Meanwhile, Bippo didn't even seem to hear Alvida, too shy as he was surrounded by minks who were looking at him curiously, touching him and wondering how he could be so strong. "I'm sorry," was the only thing he could say. "It's a shame you guys don't have cola, but lucky for you, I brought some for myself," Frankie exclaimed, pulling out a barrel of cola he had taken from the ship, drinking it right there while offering it to other minks. "Your crew member is very strange because of a simple wig. There's nothing special about it," Inu Arashi remarked, looking at the wig, trying to figure out its power over Bippo, but there was nothing there. They even tried it on their own heads, and still, nothing. "Look again. We need to figure out what power this gives the bear. Without it, he's just a shy mink." "I don't understand," Nekomemoshi commented. "Forget that, let's get back to where we left off," Inu Arashi said finally, turning back to Jinbai in front of him, who was quietly drinking sake, waiting for the leaders of to continue. "Are you saying your captain wants to move Zunsha to Wano? That's impossible since Zunsha doesn't listen to anyone. Only Kazuki Oden's commands could be given to the elephant, as he had a specific type of control. It's amazing, but no one else has been able to talk to him," Nekomemoshi explained. "Yes, Luffy mentioned that," Jinbai confirmed. "But it seems he wants to try anyway. He'd like you all to be prepared for the war as well. If you're going to fight in Wano, he wants you to stay here while he plans to visit you soon," Jinbai explained. After all, Luffy didn't want to move his main forces and leave the mink tribe unprotected there. "I see. Well, that's fine, we can do that," Inu Arashi responded. "There's also one more thing." Alvida stepped forward before joining the conversation. "The poneglyph you have hidden here. Luffy already knows of its existence and would like to see it." Upon hearing this, all the minks tensed up, uncomfortable knowing that one of the island's biggest secrets had been discovered by someone outside. I know you might be upset, but our captain knows exactly where it is. However, he is not your enemy. Remember that. He wants to build a powerful force, and you will be a part of it. Jinbei explained, as Inuarashi sighed and looked at Nekomamushi before turning back to Alvida. Well, it seems we have no choice. Do you want to see the poneglyph now? Inuarashi asked. Jinbei shook his head. No, leave that for the captain. He will come visit you as I mentioned. He gave his response. Anyway, the captain is interested in one of you. He wants us to bring back someone named Pedro. Frankie said, while Pedro, among the minks who were listening to the conversation, showed surprise. That human woman had already mentioned that the captain was interested in him before, but he didn't know why. Pedro? Nekomamushi seemed surprised, as Pedro was one of the guardians. Yes, my husband wants to speak with him, so he wants us to bring him back with us. Alvida said. Very well, I'll go. Pedro said immediately, not wanting to prolong the conversation. What else could I do? I'll talk with your captain. He said finally. Anyway, let's get going. We have nothing more to do here. Jinbei said, while bringing a chest and placing it in front of the minks, opening it to reveal numerous rumble balls. This will allow you to enter Su long form, but don't overuse them. I know you need to train. From what we noticed in Bippo's fight against Inuarashi and Nekomamushi, you can last only an hour, but this can have side effects if you use them too much, understood? He warned. This is invaluable. We thank you for this. Now our people will be much stronger in any emergency. Both leaders commented with satisfaction. Anyway, let's head to Dressrosa. Alvida said, standing as if she were leaving. There was nothing more to do in Zunsha. Almost everyone followed her back to the ship, and the samurai ended up going with Pedro. But as they boarded the ship, a stowaway also snuck aboard. Although everyone noticed, no one really cared, except for Pedro, who didn't seem to realize. Meanwhile, Bippo started using his powers, and the ship began to fly, moving forward quickly. Goodbye, Bippo. A female mink excitedly shouted, bidding farewell to Bippo as he stood at the edge of the ship with a lipstick mark on his face. Of all the crew members who had separated from the main Straw Hat ship, those who had reached Zunsha had traveled the greatest distance between Dressrosa and their destination, so they were the last to arrive at the island or their target. Even so, with Bippo's power, they were much faster, flying through the sky at hundreds of kilometers per hour. Thus, the ship disappeared over the horizon, heading toward Dressrosa. Chapter 411, Pleasures and Interruptions. The waters were calm in the middle of the sea as a black ship continued cutting through the waves. It was the feared Black Pearl, still sailing the waters of the New World, heading in a specific direction. So Bippo defeated the two rulers of S. Haha. I wish I had seen that. Luffy spoke into a den mushi. Yes. We're heading back to Dressrosa right now, with Pedro and a mink that snuck onto the ship. Jinbei responded from the other side. Great, you can head there. We're recruiting the last pirate group before returning and organizing our forces to advance to Wano. Luffy said calmly. Alright, we'll continue our journey here. Jinbei said. You can, we'll talk in Dressrosa. He responded before starting to hang up the den mushi, but a voice suddenly came from the other side. Husband. Alvida exclaimed over the phone. Hello, my love, how are you? He asked with a smile. I'm fine, I'll be waiting for you in Dressrosa, so don't be late. She said, and Luffy smiled. Of course, we'll head there, see you soon. Luffy said before hanging up the den mushi. So we're close. Vivi spoke beside Luffy. He was sitting on a beach chair, as usual, wearing his shorts to enjoy the day, while Vivi was in a bikini on a chair next to him. Yes. According to Baroque Works information, the fleet we're looking for should be in these waters. So we'll be heading back soon, right, Nami? Luffy spoke to his navigator, who was also in a bikini, walking across the deck while looking at a map. She looked at Luffy. Yes. We're heading to the position you gave me. Nami said, and Luffy nodded, satisfied with that. Stop looking at that map and come over here with your husband before we get there. Luffy said as Nami sighed before going over to him, sitting beside him while putting away the map and looking at Luffy. Only the three of them were on the deck while Lucy was eating the food Ecchi was making in the kitchen, so Luffy didn't miss the opportunity to play with his wives, while Nami was surprised by Luffy's sudden touch on the lower part of her bikini. You want to do this here? Nami raised an eyebrow at Luffy. Why not? It's not every day we do this in an open space. Luffy said with a seductive smile as his hand moved over her bikini before opening it, and his fingers slipped straight into Nami's pussy. Nami gripped the chair tightly, moaning as Luffy's warm fingers stimulated her. Are you two going to have sex right here? Vivi murmured beside them, watching as Nami simply opened her legs, allowing his hand to enter her. Vivi tried to ignore it, picking up a book and holding it in front of her. Luffy stayed silent, looking satisfied as his wife moaned under his touch while he started to play with her intimate area. Luffy. Nami moaned, looking at her husband with his hand inside her, while she sat beside him with her legs wide open. Nami had forgotten all about her navigation work on the Black Pearl, surrendering herself to pleasure. Let's take this to another level. Luffy decided as he began to slightly increase the pleasure, starting to penetrate her with his fingers. Nami screamed in surprise and pleasure as his fingers entered her, increasing her pleasure with the more fruit model, amplify human devil fruit. Hey, what's this? Vivi murmured, looking over, exclaiming as she even drooled a little. Luffy is doing that. Nami murmured weakly, trying to maintain control, but it was difficult with Luffy's intense stimulation, and her eyes widened when Luffy started to move his fingers inside her. Ah! I'm going to come, Luffy. Nami exclaimed within just a few seconds, as Luffy looked on, satisfied. He could easily please his wives by enhancing their pleasure and making them orgasm quickly. Vivi couldn't help but watch Nami, feeling hesitant as she also felt her own intimate area getting wet. It didn't take long for her to slip her hand inside her bikini bottom and start stimulating herself while watching Nami lost in pleasure. Luffy continued until he felt Nami begin to tremble all over, starting to have an orgasm right there. Luffy. That was incredible. Nami murmured, lost in pleasure. I'm glad you liked it. How about we continue? Luffy removed his fingers from Nami's pussy, which were a little soaked, and put them in his mouth. Nami hesitated for a moment, but then licked them and moved towards Luffy's shorts, beginning to pull them down, as his member stood at full attention. I'm going to give you great pleasure, husband. Nami murmured as she got closer to his penis, starting to lick it while Luffy closed his eyes, enjoying the sensation as Nami began to give him a blowjob. He heard a soft moan from beside him as Nami continued sucking his dick and saw Vivi touching her breasts with one hand while the other was between her legs. Luffy noticed Vivi's exposed breasts spilling out of her bikini top, and he couldn't resist, grabbing them with his free hand, making Vivi look at him with desire. Luffy. I want you to fuck me. She murmured, feeling the increased pleasure just from his touch on her breasts. Luffy just smiled as he stimulated her large breasts, while Nami began moving her head more vigorously, taking as much of Luffy's dick into her throat as she could. Meanwhile, with one hand, he left Vivi's breasts and moved down to her pussy, which was already quite wet, sliding his fingers in easily and beginning to move them. Vivi's pleasure quickly grew, reaching its peak. She trembled just like Nami had when Luffy was stimulating her. He started thrusting his fingers quickly, making Vivi moan out loud. That's it. Vivi moaned. This seemed to stimulate Nami even more, as she increased the force of her movements, sucking Luffy's dick eagerly. Luffy didn't mind at all as he felt Vivi finally clench his hand tightly, but he didn't stop until she reached her limit. Ah! Vivi surrendered to the pleasure, her mouth open, eyes lost as she came. Vivi, come here. Luffy requested as Vivi recovered from her intense climax. Vivi looked at Luffy, who smiled before she moved over and kissed him, getting up from her chair. Nami, you've wetted enough. I want you to ride me. Luffy said. Vivi, climb on top of me and give me your pussy. Luffy asked the blue-haired girl beside him. Nami finished licking the head of Luffy's dick and stood up, moving her bikini bottom aside and beginning to lower herself, impaling herself on Luffy's dick, sliding in easily, letting out a small moan from her lips as she felt the heat emanating from him inside her. Vivi ended up sitting on Luffy's chest, who showed no discomfort from the position, looking at her with desire as her pussy hovered in front of him. Luffy then began moving his tongue against her intimate area, while Vivi exclaimed, stunned by the pleasure. Nami started to move as well, bouncing hard on Luffy's cock, her breasts swinging wildly. Luffy, for his part, was sucking on Vivi, while she continued moaning above him. Moans echoed all across the deck of the ship, coming from both women. Yes, Luffy, just like that. Nami exclaimed, not stopping her movements, slamming her ass down on Luffy's thighs with every thrust. Luffy was enjoying both receiving and giving pleasure with Vivi and Nami on top of him, as the three of them surrendered to the moment. Meanwhile, the others on the ship were too distracted to notice anything. On the deck, only Shirahoshi glanced towards the door, but Lucy and Ecchi were too busy to be aware of what was happening. Time passed, and at the same time, Nami and Vivi reached their climax, their bodies trembling and exploding with pleasure, coming as Luffy felt both of them shaking. Luffy held firm, not coming at that moment. That was great, but I'm not stopping here. I need to come too. He said with a smile. Vivi, I want to eat your ass. Luffy said, knowing they still had time. Vivi, still panting, didn't refuse. She got up from her position and waited for Nami to move as well. Vivi sat with her back to Luffy, who positioned his deck at her rear entrance. He entered easily, without any difficulty. Vivi began shaking her ass rapidly, lost in pleasure once again, while Nami watched from the side, being replaced by Vivi as Luffy played with her pussy and kissed her. And so, the motion continued, with Vivi bouncing even faster as he wanted to finish inside her. It was only after 10 minutes that he decided to end it, as Vivi felt her ass filling with Luffy's semen. Luffy. Vivi murmured weakly, feeling her rear full of Luffy's seed as she came from her pussy. Your turn now. Luffy commented, looking at Nami. It was her time to play as well. And so, Luffy continued with his wives on the deck, turning their intimate moment into a show of positions. They used the beach chairs, even the floor, and different parts of the ship's exterior. Luffy placed Nami in a missionary position against the edge of the ship, pounding her hard. It lasted a total of 40 minutes, and now Luffy saw both his wives bend over in front of him, showing their asses for him to choose from. Like this, who should I eat now? He said playfully, even though his wives were already satisfied. He was about to choose, but something in the sea caught his eye at that moment. Well, looks like we'll have to wait until tonight. Luffy murmured, ending the sex session. The fleet he had been looking for had finally been spotted. Oh, what a shame. Nami murmured, putting her bikini back on and fixing her hair. That was a mood killer. Vivi also exclaimed, as she adjusted herself. We should probably take a bath. She said, and Nami agreed, feeling the same. The two of them went inside the ship. Luffy stayed there with a big smile. He would finish what he had started later that night. Now, he had another matter to attend to, dealing with the peculiar group approaching the crew. Chapter 412, Hapo Navy 01. The Chinjao family was sailing across the seas, embarking on another job since they were a mercenary organization known as the Hapo Navy. They had started in the West Blue and had gradually made a name for themselves in the New World over the past few years, taking on various jobs in these waters. Today, they were transporting a large sum of money for an organization, escorting a ship from a country that heavily relied on the Don Quixote family's weapons. Now that the family had been destroyed, they had to turn to another organization to purchase arms. Many countries that still depended on the Don Quixote family and their weapons factories were in the same predicament. Numerous conflicts continued to ravage their lands, and some countries and organizations had abandoned this supplier as soon as Doflamingo was killed, knowing that without Joker, they were as fragile as glass, easily shattered. Those who still trusted in them due to Kaido's association were caught by surprise when Dressrosa fell along with the family. They no longer had a way to receive their shipments, even though this would have happened eventually with the organization heading to war in Wano against the Straw Hats. The sea is in chaos right now. Do you think we'll make it to our new supplier without any problems? A man, who was from a kingdom embroiled in civil war, asked to board the ship in the center of the Hapo Navy. He needed to bring a new shipment to his kingdom. After all, they had to fight against the rebels who had risen up against the royal family due to their tyranny. They knew this, but they could do nothing except fight for their king, even though he was a tyrant. The Hapo Navy is well known. Few pirates could stand against them. Another man replied. I hope you're right. The first man murmured. Meanwhile, on one of the larger ships, Sai, one of the main members, approached his grandfather, the fearsome Chinjao, the drill. This man had a bounty of 500 million Baileys and was known for his powerful head but, though not as much anymore due to an encounter with Vice Admiral Garp. Even so, he was still a formidable pirate with conqueror's haki, which said a lot about him. Grandpa. Are you okay? Sai approached Chinjao, who had been staring at one side of the horizon for several minutes, something unusual for his grandfather. Did you notice something, Grandpa? Boo, Sai's brother, also approached. Yes. Something is coming from that direction. Chinjao murmured, his narrowed gaze indicating that his haki had detected a certain danger approaching. Should we prepare to fight? Sai, seeming to read his grandfather's mind, asked. Yes, tell everyone to prepare for a major battle, he said in a grim tone. Sai nodded and left to use the Denden Mushis to give orders to all the ships of the Hapo Navy. As Chinjao had foreseen, a dark spot began to appear on the horizon, and Boo, standing beside him, grabbed a spyglass and pointed it toward that direction, beginning to make out the ship in the distance and its flag. That. His voice came out shaky and nervous as one of the main causes of the chaos currently gripping the New World was heading toward them. There's no doubt. That ship. His nervousness was not only due to the symbol on the ship's sail but also because of the ship itself. Rumors and reports had been spreading about this crew appearing in various places in the New World, but this ship represented the worst of it, as it had been sighted at Grand Tesoro just days ago. Tell me. Who are they? Chinjao was losing his patience with his grandson, who was taking too long to respond. After all, he couldn't see who it was without a spyglass from that distance, relying only on the feeling of danger as his guide. Boo swallowed hard before addressing his grandfather. "They're the Straw Hats. And they're coming with the main ship, the Black Pearl. Which means it's their captain himself, approaching." Boo informed with a shaken tone. "Garp's grandson?" Chinjao seemed furious at this. After all, the grandson of the man who had shattered his dreams with one punch was now approaching. "We must flee. Grandpa, we need to go back. We can't fight them," Boo exclaimed, clearly terrified. Who was Monkey D. Luffy, appearing in the newspapers since the East Blue, and what did he represent? Everyone knew well enough, and except for the world government, the navy, and the four emperors, no one could stand against them. "No." Chinjao suddenly spoke, making Boo look at him, confused by what his grandfather meant by that. "Let our ships prepare to fight them," Chinjao decided, letting his rage cloud his judgment, driven by the desire for revenge against Monkey D. Garp, believing he could defeat Monkey D. Luffy to settle the score. Boo stared at his grandfather in disbelief, then ordered an attack against the Straw Hats as if he had completely lost his mind, while the Black Pearl continued to approach. Thanks to Sai's orders, the Happo fleet also began preparing, turning their ships. "Hey, what's going on?" The people from the kingdom carrying the money noticed the movement of the ships around them, preparing for a fight. They began to wonder who was out there and if it could be rebels from their kingdom, trying to steal the king's money. "Is there a problem?" Sai approached Boo, who was visibly shaken. "Take this, brother, see for yourself." Boo handed the spyglass to Sai, who raised it and looked toward the ship, becoming just as stunned as his brother. "This is terrible, Grandpa. We can't fight them," Sai declared, frowning. "Don't be a coward like your brother, Sai. They're coming for us, and you know it's only a matter of time before their ship reaches us. And if they want a fight, then let's give them one. It's time for me to show Garp a taste of what he made me lose." Chinjao spoke with confidence, believing he could handle Monkey D. Luffy. Or rather, make Garp suffer, already imagining the Navy hero crying in a corner, uttering words of regret for making him lose the point on his head that one day. The Straw Hats ship continued to approach the fleet, and their flag finally became visible to everyone. This quickly made the entire fleet, including Chinjao's grandsons, realize that this was the ship of the four emperors, filling them with fear. The once confident movements of the Happo Navy crew began to falter as they questioned whether they should fight against that ship. But the only one still confident was Chinjao, who grew angry at his group for cowardly backing down so easily. He grabbed Sai's Den Mushi. "Stop trembling. We are the Happo Navy. We will not retreat from these pirates. Follow me, and we will destroy them," Chinjao declared with determination. Meanwhile, the ship from the kingdom was completely stunned, desperate to get out of there as quickly as possible. "They're insane for wanting to fight that pirate crew. What have we gotten ourselves into? Now we're in the middle of a battle, and we're going to die because of it." The men from the country were far from pleased with the situation, witnessing one of the New World's hurricanes appear before them, bringing misfortune as the Happo Navy seemed intent on facing them. On the Straw Hats ship, Luffy was still at the edge of the deck, gazing at the Happo Navy as the Black Pearl naturally sailed toward them. Nami and Vivi were taking a bath inside the ship. Shirahoshi opened the kitchen door at that moment as she approached, accompanied by Lucy, whose belly was enormous after eating so much takoyaki that Ecchi had prepared. Ecchi followed closely behind the pair as they headed toward the deck. Shirahoshi was the first to reach Luffy, swimming through the air until she caught up with the captain and hugged him from behind. "You smell like sex," she murmured into his ear. "Are you surprised?" Luffy responded with a grin. "I know you were aware of everything happening on the deck." "True, but someone had to keep your sister and Ecchi in the kitchen. Anyway, I hope to be rewarded for that tonight." She spoke in a seductive tone. "Of course, you know it's my duty as your husband to attend to you, my lovely wife," Luffy said with a small smile. "So they are the Happo Navy?" Lucy asked as she approached her brother, looking curiously at the group of ships. "Yes, that's right," Luffy commented while the ships seemed to be preparing for his arrival. "It seems they are braver than I thought. Maybe Chinjao is more stubborn than I imagined." Luffy smiled at that, not knowing exactly what was happening, but he could certainly sense, through his observation haki, that the enemies were prepared to face them, even though many of them were scared. Sai and Boo stood behind their grandfather, who was at the bow of the ship, watching Luffy's fierce ship approach. Suddenly, the advancing ship stopped a few dozen meters ahead, with Luffy using his more fruit model, Amplify Human Devil Fruit on it, surrounded by cannons from all the ships pointing at them. As Luffy moved to the edge of the ship, Nami and Vivi finally emerged from the ship after washing up, tending to their wet hair. Luffy took a few steps forward and stared at the man who was looking at him with a certain coldness. "Garp's grandson," Chinjao murmured as Luffy raised his arm to greet him, while he stood out from everyone else. Both on the ship and on the others around it, everyone was frightened and cautious in the presence of Monkey D. Luffy. Yes, I'm Garp's grandson. And you, Chenjiao. By the way you're looking at me, do you want to fight? Luffy asked with a smile. Yes. I'm going to get revenge for what your grandfather did. Chenjiao said, while running his hand over his head, still feeling the void where the symbol of his strength once was. The drill that could break anything, even the treasure he had hidden in nearly unbreakable ice. This was the reason for Chenjiao's deep hatred toward Garp and his family. Grandpa, I think we should reconsider this. Sai murmured beside him, but Chenjiao didn't care, ignoring him while Luffy's smile grew wider. Well, this is interesting. Luffy commented. After all, I'm going to make you join my fleet by the end of the day. Luffy declared, surprising everyone. Join your fleet? Don't be ridiculous. Chenjiao, hearing the most absurd thing he could have imagined, exclaimed, and suddenly unleashed his conqueror's haki directly at Luffy, trying to intimidate him. Wind and energy crackled across his ship, while the other ships around them trembled, with Chenjiao clearly enraged. He's serious. Lucy murmured in surprise, completely unfazed by the conqueror's haki, just like the other members of Luffy's crew, who could easily handle it. For Luffy, it was merely a breeze. He looked at Chenjiao, his eyes glowing even redder, and suddenly exploded with his own conqueror's haki. Quickly, Luffy's haki began to dominate the area, overpowering Chenjiao's, who struggled to stay firm, shocked by this. Everyone around quickly realized Chenjiao was losing control. Sai and Boo were stunned as they felt Luffy's haki strike them, making them fall to their knees, terrified. Only Chenjiao managed to remain standing, trying to resist, while the entire Happo Navy fleet began collapsing, one by one, across the other ships. What? In the end, only Chenjiao and his two grandsons, who were kneeling, remained conscious. Chenjiao was clearly stunned but still enraged, blinded by his desire for revenge. Luffy, meanwhile, smiled even wider. As I said, you'll be part of my fleet by the end of this day. Luffy declared. Chapter 413, Happo Navio 2. You're dreaming, kid. I'm going to give you a beating. Chenjiao said with a dark tone. We don't have much to talk about, so I'm just going to give you a beating, and I might even fix your head if I like you. Luffy declared as he advanced, disappearing from the ship's bow the next moment, heading toward the other ship. Don't underestimate me. You'll regret it. Chenjiao leaped forward, charging at Luffy blindly, while his grandsons watched, not knowing what to do, still kneeling. What should we do, brother? Boo murmured to Sai. What else can we do? We can't even move, and Grandpa's mind is clouded by his vengeance. Sai murmured, knowing full well that they were pretty much screwed. Luffy smiled in midair as he advanced toward Chenjiao, leaping toward him in the middle of the sea. The next moment, an explosion between the two fists erupted as they connected, sending out a burst of Conqueror's haki. The clash of their haki even distorted the world, changing its colors to blue as they continued trying to overpower each other. This guy really hates Grandpa. Luffy murmured, handling him easily, but the man in front of him stood firm due to his desire for revenge, even being irrational. The impact favored Luffy easily as Chenjiao found himself thrown back, before crashing into the ship, creating an explosion in the midst of his grandsons with his own body. Ah! Sai and Boo were sent flying away as they fell off the ship from the impact, but two hands stretched out, grabbing each of them from both sides of the Black Pearl. Lucy stretched out her hands, pulling them onto her ship, preventing them from falling into the water, still paralyzed by the Conqueror's haki of her brother, while Luffy landed on the main ship of the Happo Navy. Chenjiao, I won't understand this anymore, so let's just finish this. Luffy said calmly, looking at the hole. Damn you. Chenjiao's voice emerged, breaking through the deck as he appeared once more, attempting to hit Luffy with his head, only for Luffy to vanish and reappear at his side. Chenjiao tried to punch him, but Luffy jumped into the air, stabilizing himself above the ship, while Chenjiao gave him a dark look, appearing frustrated. Chenjiao, let's end this, send me your most powerful attack. Luffy said. Chenjiao didn't respond, but his head was coated with armament haki, preparing to strike Luffy. Very well. Luffy said as his hand was also covered with haki, using only the first form of armament haki. In the next moment, both Chenjiao on the deck of the ship and Luffy in the air charged at each other, closing the distance the next second. Fist and Chenjiao's almost oval head collided once again, creating a shockwave of two armament hakis clashing. Ha ha ha. This guy is so funny. I've never seen someone use their head to fight. Lucy laughed, watching Luffy clash against Chenjiao's head, while Chenjiao seemed to be pushing himself harder than he could handle. Why doesn't Luffy just finish this already? Nami murmured, still drying herself with her hand, generating wind like a hairdryer. He doesn't seem like he's going to drag this out much longer. Shirahoshi said as the entire crew, along with Sai and Boo, who were paralyzed beneath Lucy, watched the contest. Suddenly, Luffy's fist began sinking into Chinjao's head, leaving everyone surprised. Nay. Is the captain planning to kill him? But he was supposed to be a potential ally, wasn't he? Ecchi murmured, quite shocked. Grandpa. Both grandsons grew worried as they saw Luffy's punch starting to crush Chinjao's head. But what they apparently expected didn't happen, because as Luffy's punch sank into the upper part of his head, the lower part began to grow, until his skin became pointed, regaining the original shape Chinjao had in the past. What? The collective, stunned shout was heard from everyone still conscious. Chinjao lost consciousness the next moment, as his eyes turned white, and he slammed the tip of his head straight into the deck. The next moment, the ship cracked with the impact, shattering from just the touch of Chinjao's pointed head. What? The most surprised were his grandsons, Sai and Bu, staring in shock as the ship broke apart with Chinjao and the other crew members still unconscious from Luffy's hockey. Luffy left the ship behind and headed back to the Black Pearl, seeing that the fight was over. Ecchi and Nami, can you get everyone out of the sea? He asked. Ecchi dove in to retrieve Chinjao, who had sunk into the ocean due to the impact from Luffy, while Nami created giant claws to place the floating people onto another ship. Ecchi brought Chinjao and placed him with the other crew members on the other ship, while Sai and Bu remained silent and somewhat fearful, still on the Black Pearl. Well. It seems your main ship was destroyed. Now you can go back to taking care of your grandpa and the others. We'll wait for your grandpa to wake up and see what we'll do. Luffy declared, as Sai and Bu quickly left the ship, casting cautious glances. It's over already? That was fast. Vivi commented. Yeah. I'm sure that guy will come crying and thanking me for what I just did. I reversed what my grandpa did to him. Luffy said before yawning. I think I'll take a nap and a bath for now. I'm heading to my room. Luffy said in conclusion. Everyone watched Luffy leave, while even Shirahoshi followed him silently. Vivi and Nami knew full well what they were going to do, but they didn't mind them being intimate in the meantime. After all, they had already had their moments with Luffy before. It was only 2 hours later when Luffy emerged from the room, leaving Shirahoshi in a deep sleep with a satisfied smile on her face, as he left his wife behind.